Senator Biggs.
Present.
Senator Erickson.
Here.
Senator Moyne.
Here.
Senator Ramsey. Senator Schmidt.
Here.
Senator Edidici. Senator Owusu.
Here.
Senator Andrade Lara.
Here.
Senator, Bandero. Senator Landis.
Here.
Senator Nowinski.
Here.
Senator Oberati. Senator Stilwell.
Here.
Senator Carl. Senator Christensen.
Here.
Senator Archinton. Senator I'm so sorry. How do I announce it?
Hospital.
Senator Chiesi.
Here.
Senator Sajal.
Here.
Senator Dulles.
Yep. Here.
Senator Garson.
Here.
Senator Sampson.
Here.
Senator Moyne. Senator Mitchell. Senator Ring. Senator Zilmer.
Here.
Senator Hoysa.
Here.
Senator Roebuck. Senator Albright.
Here.
Senator Rodriguez.
Here.
Alright, President Cronin. Alright, perfect. So we'll now begin our meeting. We'll start with open forum. Is there anyone here for open forum? No. Alright, is there any dissent to the approval of consent agenda? See none?
I was hoping could you just explain what the appointment is that's being made today?
Oh, yes. I'll yield to our advisor.
As many of you have seen by email, the Speaker of the Senate tendered his resignation officially yesterday in the interest of trying to ensure a most smooth operation for this meeting in consultation with student government leadership. It was determined that it would be good to ask somebody to step in as a parliamentarian who'd actually been through this process before and who had observed it and who might have a little bit more experience in parliamentary procedure. And a couple of things were considered in that. One being that the person who is conducting the meeting does not carry a vote, which according to the student government governing documents, if there is an absence of the speaker, the vice president steps in. But the vice president carries a vote as well. Okay, so that was one of the things that we wanted to consider, was that the person chairing the meeting would not be carrying a vote, but then also that they would have experience in this setting before. And so a couple of things were considered, and Mr. Trenny, who was a senator last year and is not an elected official right now, has offered to step in and serve as the chairperson for this meeting for that purpose. And so with your consent of the consent agenda, the approval of the consent agenda, he will step in and do that and carry us through the business meeting today. Any further questions? Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Is there any further dissent? All right, then the agenda has been approved.
Thank you, everybody. Hopefully everyone can hear me. If not, just let me know. And we'll proceed in the agenda with officer reports, starting with President Cronin.
Thank you, Andrew. First of all, I hope everyone had a great and relaxing spring break, and that you're all excited and ready to be back for today's long meeting. I'm going to try and make my update quick since we have a lot to get through. Over spring break, myself and other members of Students United traveled to Washington, D.C. to advocate on our federal agenda. I believe, and with the rest of Students United, that we had a very successful trip. We got to meet with a lot of different representatives and senators from Minnesota, as well as different education committees and different lobbyist groups in DC that work to advocate for higher education. Another Students United update, Spring Delegates is coming up. It is the first weekend of April, so April 5th and 6th, I believe. So if you are interested in attending, once again, our campus coordinator, Ray Whitty, is the person who selects the delegation to go. So be sure to reach out to him to express your interest. This is the delegation where we elect next year's board of, or exec leadership of the state chair, vice chair, and treasurer. So those elections will be held. And I believe the location is still tentative, but I'm pretty sure that we're leaning to going to St. Paul again and hosting it at St. Paul College. So if you're interested in that, please make sure to reach out to Ray Whitty. And if you don't have his contact, you can speak to me or Vice President Omar, and we can get that to you. Also, make sure at the last meeting 2 weeks ago, I had handed out those quarter sheets that had the different potential times for committee and senate to be held to create a bylaw that would make those official times for next year. Please be turning those back into me, or I had sent out a form link through email, and fill that out. Either or works. You can do both, but you'll still only get one vote taken into account. Tomorrow is our March meet and confer, so if you signed up 2 weeks ago, please make sure you're there at 11:30, just down the hallway. And I know some of you have already reached out expressing that you might not be able to attend anymore, so if you are interested in attending, you can speak with me or Vice President Omar about getting you on that list. We still do have 2 openings, I believe. And then finally, Vice President Jones dropped off 9 tickets for a Breaking Benjamin concert that's on March 29th. So if any of you are interested in attending, it's in the Verizon Center. Please be sure to email Amber to get one of those tickets. Similarly, how you had reserved a hockey ticket back in January. If you did that, just shoot her an email. And with that, I yield.
We'll now move into Vice President Omar's report.
I don't have much to report besides senator reports. I know a lot of them have been pushed back. So at next week's meeting, I'll send out the sheet again just so you guys can double check and get that in order. And I will now be taking over any office hour forms you guys have to hand in. So that's about it.
Okay, we'll now move into our budget hearing since we have no senator reports. So the first order is discussion of the order of the business. So if everyone wants to reference this white sheet, it says budget meeting etiquette. This was something that was passed out last year. It just offers some good advice and tips for the budget meeting. So like ask original questions, deal with redundancy, seek answers when you think you need to have them. Obviously you want to ask questions and be well informed when you vote, so please do that. Be respectful of the people coming. You guys did invite some of the speakers in today, and if they are here, they're here out of their time, so please be respectful. And then, so some of the don'ts, don't ask questions that have already been asked or that are found in the blue book. And if you do want the blue book at any time, you can have it be passed around, or you can come up and walk over to it. It's just for your reference and everyone's reference. Don't express opinions unrelated to voting. This is not the time to talk about like what they should be doing. This is how you think their money should be spent. So if you think someone on the list should be doing something different, now is not the time to have that. It's about if they should get that money or not. Don't speak out of turn, and please don't speak at length. Avoid using filler words, so like ums and ahs. I know I'm doing it, but that's okay. Do not use a speaking point to vocalize your support of an idea that has already been expressed. Use nonverbal like snapping or hitting the table. It helps clear up a lot of the speaking points. And some very helpful tips at the bottom. If you, for some reason, if we vote on a line item and then it fails, and then we vote again and it still fails, you can move to caucus for an X amount of minutes. Again, only use this in extreme cases, as we want to get through the night fast. Simply to do that, you just make a motion, someone seconds it, and then we'll caucus, and that's just, everyone will stand up and converse among each other. There won't be a formal setting like this to do that. And again, refer to the book by SAC and the sheet that they passed around. I think it's the white sheet and the budget sheet. Their narrative is all in here, so please refer to that. And we can also recess if you need it, but please use that sparingly, as we do have a dinner break at 5:45. So with that, we'll get started with our first fee, the intercollegiate athletic fee. Bison? Yeah, do you want to go to the podium? And for reference, each speaker has 8 minutes to speak. So this goes along with who's appealing and who's invited. If you have any questions for him right now, you guys can feel free to ask them. We do need to vote on this, so there does need to be a motion to be made to approve what's recommended or not, which means you can change it through an amendment, but there will need to be a motion to be made at a certain point. With that, you can begin.
Thank you. I come back to stand before you to answer any questions you might have about the presentation that was made by our student fee committee representatives a couple weeks ago before spring break. If you recall, the request at that time was 2%. We talked about, I think there was some confusion a little bit. Some questions were asked and I think answered about the net amount of the increase. And I think, you as student senators can only control what you control. You get to decide how much the fee increase is. You don't all have any control over enrollment and those types of things. But as our presenters made the point, it's a basic math equation. The total amount of students' fee support is dependent on the credit fee base, which is driven by enrollment, which, as I said, you don't control, and then by the amount of fee increase, which you do control. And what we've tried to make a point of in our presentation is we've had varying levels of student fee support increase over time, from no increase to 2%, to last year we asked for 4%, that went to referendum. But even, in the case of the increase last year of 4%, we are not realizing a full 4% increase because of accompanying enrollment declines. And I think the point that we tried to make in the presentation a couple of weeks ago is even a 2% increase combined with the downturn in enrollment that we're anticipating makes a net increase less than 1%, about 0.72% to be specific. So we're here to ask those questions. I think a couple things that I want to reemphasize from the presentation is that we asked for a 2% increase, even though when we came to you last year and asked for a 4% increase and it went to referendum, we said that would probably be our lineage, that we to catch up with our peers, many of which are maxed out at the $4.58 or $4.58 per $4.58 per credit hour maximum. Many of our peers in the Minnesota State system are maxed out at that amount. In going back to our presentation the previous year, we said that this may have to be, rather than try to catch up all at once and align, better with the peer level of students' fee support across the system, we're willing to look at moving in that direction over time. And I think at the time when we made that presentation, we said that would probably take us between 4 and 5 years, to catch up with our peers, and many of which are maxed out at that per credit hour maximum of $4.58 per credit hour. And so, I guess if you look back on the 2018 presentation, you might have anticipated us coming to you in 2019 asking for a 4% increase. That's what we said we were going to do in 2018. I think in deference to the budget environment, in deference to the referendum that happened this fall to fund a sports dome that will benefit all of our students across campus, and recognizing the investment that you made there, we came back with a 2% increase rather than making the 4% request that we had alluded to in the previous fiscal year. And so, I stand before you to answer any questions that you have about the proposal that we made for a 2% increase and why we believe it's justified and the rationale that accompanies it, and open it up for questions at this time.
Are there any questions? Senator Zelmer.
So the money that's used from student fees, is it only used for athletic travel, or is there any money in the budget that comes from student fees that is used for anything besides student travel and student food and travel expenses? So for example, are they used for the matching pairs of tennis shoes that they all get, or the matching apparel?
No, that's separate. You know, the student fees are focused on our operating budget and covers a lot of the things that you talked about. I mean, when you have, 20 sports teams, 525 student athletes, and almost 400 competition opportunities home and away, it's expensive. And the majority of what your student fee budget is supporting is related to lodging, travel, and meals, recruiting expenses to bring in prospective student athletes. It does not fund any salaries, coaches' salaries or anything like that. It also does not fund scholarships, and a lot of that, I think, is tied to language in your student bylaws in terms of what it can fund and what it cannot.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Senator DeDigi.
You said you requested for 2% instead of 4%?
Yes.
You usually request. That 2% you're not requesting for. What areas is it getting cut from?
What areas? Well, if we are, if we realize that 2% increase, what will it be committed to funding? Is that the gist of your question?
The 2% that you're reducing from the 4% that you usually get. What areas are you taking that away from?
Well, as I think we tried to point out in that presentation, really, given the challenges that we've experienced, with declining enrollment, again, beyond the scope of control of those in the room, and combined with the fee increases, it's really been dedicated to just trying to keep up with the inflationary pressures that we're experiencing in travel costs, meals, lodging, those types of things. Definitely netting less than a 1% overall increase, that will not keep up with CPI, which is basically hovered between 2 and 3% in the areas that I mentioned. And so, we'll have to make some adjustments. With not asking for the 4% increase, we'll have to try to make that up in other areas. Adjust, the way that we travel, lodge our teams, meals and those types of things. It's only 22%. The student fees is only covering 22% of our budget, so we have other resources that can try to shore up, not asking for a 4% increase rather than a 2% increase, and that's the adjustments that we'll have to make. But we're hoping that we can commit the entirety of the 2% increase to keeping pace with those inflationary pressures that we experience with travel, lodging, and meals.
Any further questions? Well, Senator Landis.
Permission to give some context before my question.
Go ahead.
So, Director Beisman, you brought up your request last year of a 4% increase. When you came to Senate to present and request student government support for that 4% increase, you were asked a question regarding your reserve funds and over the previous few years. At that meeting, you had stated that athletics had been out of necessity dipping into their reserve funds for the past few years to help pay for, necessary items. Yet this year, when you provided your documentation for the reserve fund balances, over the past 5 years, you've had a flat balance of $197,940.20. And so my question is, can you resolve or reconcile the discrepancy between the information provided this year and that provided last year?
Yeah, we have, I guess the quick answer is that we have other reserve balances besides the student fee. That's, as we mentioned, that accounts for about 22% of our funding, and so we have other reserve balances that we have had to go into to counter the deficit. We've talked, not with this group, but with others that have preceded you about the challenges that we face. What we term in previous years a structural budget challenge related to hockey realignment. And I'm not going to bore you all with that because it traces back a long period of time. But we've, related to hockey realignment, where we've seen Big Ten hockey, the advent of Big Ten hockey, and we've seen the startup of NCHC hockey. We've seen different previous partners move in other directions, which for us has created several challenges on both the revenue and the expense side. We've seen, a downturn in revenue. We're not seeing, we used to realize about a $125,000 revenue share from the WCHA tournament in its previous format. Now we're paying in about $50,000 to subsidize the operation of the WCHA tournament. So you can do some quick math there and say that's about a $175,000 turn. We've seen increased expenses as our geographic footprint has grown. The geographic footprint of the WCHA as it currently stands is the United States. We've got teams in Alabama, we've got teams in Alaska. It's led to a substantial increase in travel, about $50,000. The last thing that we saw as a result of hockey realignment is a downturn in revenue related to average ticket price. I'm happy to say that attendance has not dipped. In fact, it's increased, where some people might have projected a downturn in interest in our realigned conference. We've actually seen steady or increasing attendance, but we've seen a dip in the average ticket price. We don't have some of the quote-unquote marquee opponents that we like to think that everybody's coming to watch the Mavericks play. But the reality is they like to come and see some of the Mavericks play some of our marquee opponents like North Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin. And we were able to charge a premium ticket price for those. And we're not able to do that. We're not seeing the parade of premium marquee opponents that are some people's perception of premium marquee opponents through the building anymore. And that's seen a downturn in revenue. Overall, it's created about a $250,000 to $300,000 structural budget deficit, which is what I addressed last year in saying, we've had to dip into reserves other than the student fee reserve account. We could have. I mean, in some regard, it might be, robbing Peter to pay Paul as far as, hey, we've got a deficit, we've got to tap into some reserve account. Why not the student fee reserve account? We've tried to really focus the student fee reserve account on funding specific areas of operation, which were addressed in the previous question, and not to address our structural budget challenges. We're trying to maintain, not coming to you and asking you to fund any more percent of our budget than you're currently funding, which is about 22% of our budget. And so we kind of want to separate those issues and say, structural budget issue, I just explained where we believe the issue is. We don't believe that anybody sitting around this table is responsible for that structural budget challenge. And that's why we haven't dipped into the student fee reserves, but we have had to dip into other reserve accounts that were discretionary in nature. We have had to work with finance and administration and institutional officials on creating a payback plan that will eventually buy down that deficit over time, and at the same time creating a plan that says, guess what, the old gang's not getting back together. Even though I think some in the Big Ten Conference, when we outdrew Minnesota last weekend in a conference hockey tournament, 2-1 would like to see the old WCHA come back together. It's not going to happen. And so all those challenges that I've talked to you about, we've got to find a way to fix them through other means. And that can't be necessarily through student fees, but through other revenue generation and getting other expenses in check. And we continue to do that, but to your question, we have not had to dip into the student fee reserve at this time to address the deficit that we continue to run. but we have had to tap into other reserve accounts and make other arrangements for sort of a payback to buy down the deficit that we've accumulated.
Any further questions? Any further? Seeing none, thank you very much. We'll now move into discussion on the intercollegiate athletic fee. Is there any discussion? Not a question, but discussion. Remember, we do need a motion on the 2%. Senator Moyne.
Before we go on, I just wanted to clarify that if you're involved with a particular area that's being discussed, you can't comment, correct?
No.
That's incorrect? That's incorrect? Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Yep.
Thank you.
Senator Dahl.
Can I have motion?
Yes.
I'd like to motion the 2%.
Is there a second? President Cronin? Is there any discussion on the motion for the 2%? So is accepting the proposed 2% increase? Senator Landis.
I think that the point should be considered that this year the students voted in a referendum to add an additional structure to our campus, a seasonal sports facility. And while it would be disingenuous to say that that facility is purely for athletics, it is not. It would be just as disingenuous to suggest that that would not benefit athletics, because it certainly will. I believe that the students have already gone above and beyond what they've committed to athletics from this past year. And I think we should consider, rather than approving the 2% increase, going to their 2019 base rate, which would still represent about a 5-cent increase to the student fee to maintain the level of funding that they had this year. And so that, I don't know if that's discussion on this motion or dissent to this motion, but I hope that was appropriate to say.
Yes. Yes. You can always make an amendment to the motion if you so desire. I don't know if you did or not. Okay. If not, we can skip it.
Yeah, so I guess the amendment I would propose is to switch the funding to a $3.91 fee per credit hour.
Is there a second to the amendment? Senator Zellman. Any discussion on the amendment to bring it to $3.91 per credit hour? Senator Dahl.
Regarding the, keeping it flat, from a personal aspect in terms of being an athlete, obviously, these things, in terms of being an athlete, obviously you guys have provided for us, and students in general, myself included, has provided very many things for us. One being the bubble. The baseball team, softball team, soccer team, we're all excited for the bubble. We all are. I also know of some friends that are not athletes at all, and they are excited for the bubble as well. Now, regarding this and the bubble, trying to compare the bubble and this is kind of, not to say irrelevant in terms of, yes, the bubble has helped out athletics, but it's not like a sprinkling on the top of the ice cream for us. This increase right here is for lodging, is for food, is for things that we can have when we travel. Like with the baseball travels to Arkansas, they can have a coach bus or a sleeper bus instead of a coach bus. I don't know if you guys have ever been on the difference, but when you have an 18-hour drive bus or bus drive and you have to sleep on a coach bus, which isn't very good for anyone who's been on a coach bus, it's very hard to go to or drive back from Arkansas, an 18-hour drive, and then get back at 8 a.m. and have class. Things like that we'll have to cut. In terms of, we are the #1 team in the NSIC in our conference for having the most teams. We have 20 teams. No one else has that. If there's our tennis team, they cannot fund their own trips. They cannot travel to Gustavus. They have to pay their own way. They have to pay their own food. If they want to practice against Concordia St. Paul, they have to drive themselves. These are things that concern me. Swimming, they don't have necessarily the best traveling. They can't travel so many people. Football wouldn't be able to travel as many people. In terms of, and possibly, if we can't fund this, we would have to possibly maybe cut teams or eliminate teams, which is something we do not want to do in terms of Mankato. We're one of the best in the nation in terms of sports. If you guys go to the MAVRIK, did you know? I think it's one of the. He put in the NSIC Cup standings, I believe. If you see it, it's on the 3rd page. We have an overall of 122 points. The second closest is Augustana, which isn't even in our Minsky system. They have 105. So by saying, my only statement is just saying that, not to say don't punish the athletes, because we are providing by far. We are very grateful for what the students are doing by far. Everything that you guys have done in terms of funding a bubble, the 4% increase last year. But these are just some things, like Kevin had said, with the enrollment dipping soon, possibly projected. We don't want to possibly eliminate teams or, travel not as many players, or they have to buy their own food, and it gets to be a hectic. This is just be a little less burden on the back of the athletic department.
Before we continue, I want to make 2 points real quick. We did pass around motion sheets. Please use these for motions and amendments. We are going to, if you do not have some, they are in your Senate binders, or use a sheet of piece of paper. It just helps us clarify what you're saying. And when you're speaking, we also do a microphone, so please pass them around, because sometimes it's hard to hear. We only have 3 for senators, so please pass it if you need it. And then if you need to get on the speakers list, please make eye contact. I will write your names down. And if I screw up your names, I'm sorry. With that, we'll go to Senator Nowinski.
So I would, I would disagree with the amendment to keep them at a flat rate, keep the athletics fee at a flat rate. I think going off of what Senator Dulk said, that for a Division II primarily athletics department, we're one of the premier at that level athletics universities. And I think it's a huge point of pride for the university, and I think for some people it's a recruitment tool, and I think that by cutting the funding for trips and things like that, we're going to not be able to recruit premier athletes to our university, and the attendance and other things associated with athletics will decline. So I think that their 2% request is valid. Thanks.
Senator, I'm going to say your name wrong,
Pospisil. Just sound it out.
Pospisil.
Yep.
There we go. Thank you.
Okay, so going off of, oh my goodness. So going off about what the 2 senators said, we pride ourselves, being MSU students, as being a diverse school, and restricting the funding to this would be undermining underrepresented sports, because those are going to be the first ones to be cut. And like I said, they're doing a very good job. It's a very good point and selling point for our university, and just because we have enrollment going down, I think it's very important to maintain our diversity in sports as well, because that sets us apart from any other school in our circuit.
Senator Hoysen.
I don't think that Senator Landis is suggesting that the athletics aren't valuable or important. I just think that he's suggesting that the increase we've already created for our students, because of the bubble that wasn't even voted on by that many people, was majorly voted on by athletes who already knew about the bubble going on, because there's a lot of them, and their coaches, they tell them to vote for it because they want to use it. But also, that makes it sound like I'm against what he's saying, which is not necessarily true. I just think it should be noted that, what the athletic teams said, they're going to be losing budget money anyways, because if they're not going to be having as many students paying for it, so what they're trying to do is make up for the money that they will already be losing, and the bubble money isn't going to be going to that. So the increase that they're asking for is still covering the bases that they already are needing and already are asking for, and that's what the increase is for. So yeah.
Any further discussion on the amendment to the main motion? Seeing none, we'll move into a vote. I'm going to stand and count, so all in favor, please raise your placard of the amendment of all in favor of the amendment for $3.91 per credit hour, the Landis amendment to the motion, please raise your placard if you're in favor. All opposed? All opposed? Amendment fails. Back to the main motion of the 2% increase. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll move into a vote on the 2% increase for the intercollegiate athletic fee.
We need a count on
We need, yep, I will get a count, yep. All in favor of the 2% increase for the intercollegiate athletic fee, please raise your placard now. Please raise them high. All opposed? All opposed? Any abstaining? The 2% for the intercollegiate athletic fee passes 20-3 to 2 abstaining. And with that, it is passed. With time, we will move into the student activity fees and the appeals of those coming. Before we continue, I do want to say the rest of the agenda will follow as the bottom is. So when we're done hearing the appeals and the invited speakers, we'll then go into the final recommendations, and that's where we will vote on these recommendations, not when they're appealing and not when they're invited. These two parts of the budget, or the agenda, sorry, thank you, are for questions, not discussion. Discussion will come in the recommendation section on the bottom of the agenda, if that makes sense. With that, we'll start with the appeals, and we'll start with MAVRIK Adventures. And again, you have 8 minutes for Q&A and presentation.
So I'm not limited to 2 minutes for my original statements? I thought I was. That was going to be pretty quick. Can everybody hear me? Test, test. There you go. Everybody hear me?
Yep.
My name is Todd Fingston. I'm the Director of Campus Recreation. I'm standing in for Sam Steiger today, who's on a family vacation in Florida for the week, so a much-needed vacation. And along with me is Elliot Floyd. Elliot is our current graduate assistant for MAVRIK Adventures, he is in his 2nd semester. So, Campus Recreation would like to respectfully appeal the Student Allocations Committee recommendation for fiscal 20 for MAVRIK Adventures of $11,000, and that would be $6,000 in student hourly, along with $5,000 in programming dollars. We're looking at appealing for $19,504, which is basically what we're receiving today, is a graduate assistant position plus $1,800 in programming dollars, which is 3 programs per semester at $300 per program. The budget request that Sam submitted for MAVRIK Adventures was to portray the best way to continue the progress that we've made over the past 3 years as we continue to push for expansion of MAVRIK Adventures into a program with staffing, space, and funding on campus. As far as the space item goes, and now it's going to be on the long-term campus master plan, with potentially, years down the road with an auto rec center expansion. We've already talked about that, and that's going to be in place, at least on the campus master plan. So at least it's on the radar of the university. As far as the graduate assistant position, and I think that's really what's in question today, and the need for that GA position. The GAs that we have in the Adventure Education Program and in MAVRIK Adventures have a specialized skill set. And that skill set is certifications, it's experience that they bring over the course of potentially years of undergrad work, and beyond that. I know Elliot has worked both in the classroom and out of the classroom beyond his undergraduate work and the experiences he has there, that he became a very attractive candidate for us, along with Bill Landis and Valerie Stocking, who are GAs in the Adventure Education Program. When we look at the experiential ed master's program and the students that we can attract as a university, and then those experiences that we look at when we hire graduate assistants to work in our departments, that's a key piece of this. And what a person like Elliot brings to the table in the areas of risk management, medical care, guiding trips, outdoor programming, and other certifications that he has are truly not attainable with a $10 hour undergrad student employee or an intern. They really aren't. There's a misconception that leading these events, planning and executing the pilot programs that we've offered for the last couple of years, and creating programs like this is easy, and it's truly not. There's a lot of behind-the-scenes work that goes on with these programs, not only in risk management and planning, but working within the university and the political aspect of that, along with really just keeping our participants safe, and I think that's one of the key things. In fact, we had a significant injury in our bike trip, in our bike program last October, and the fact that we had a solid risk management plan in place, and Sam and Elliot worked on that extensively. When it happened, Elliot was right on site, and he took care of it rapidly, confidently, and properly. Not only on the site, but then we got proper medical attention for that participant after that, and the program was able to continue really transparently and seamlessly. And it was because we had that risk management plan in place, but the person with the certification to be able to handle that. And I think that's truly important. There's a lot of energy and excitement over MAVRIK Adventures over the past 3 years. You know, just to give you a little historical context, 3 years ago, or I should say in fiscal 17, David Childers was in that position as a graduate assistant, doing a lot of research and planning. Then last year, when Joe Wolf was in the position, we started implementing some pilot programs on a shoestring budget. There was no programming dollars from student government. And then this year, well, a year ago, when you approved funding for the graduate assistant position, then you also approved funding for $1,800 in programming dollars, which allowed us to not only offer 3 programs this past fall with success. One of them was a repeat program, and that was outdoor cooking. Went from about 50 participants to 107. So even though it was a repeat program, a lot of new people, and we doubled really the number of participants, and that's pretty critical. And then right now we've got slated 4 programs for this semester. So we've been charged to offer 3 per semester. We've offered 3 last fall, and we're going to offer 4 this spring. And we're really excited about that. And beyond the pilot programs, position, you know, as aided in research, planning, trying to seek out other funding sources, along with the master planning process, talking to the university upper administration about MAVRIK Adventures, so doing a lot of student outreach and faculty staff outreach, but also then leading meetings that are MAVRIK Adventures ad hoc committee meetings. I know Elliot does that, and I attend those meetings, and some of you as senators do as well. But there's a lot that goes into it that sometimes we don't see on the surface, and I think that needs to be brought up. So concerning strides, I think MAVRIK Adventures has definitely made strides, you know, going from 3 pilot programs last year to at least 7 this year. So we're moving in the right direction with continued outreach to students who are passionate about the possibility of a full-blown MAVRIK Adventures program. But my boss, David Jones, has charged us with starting small and getting small wins, and I think we've done that consistently over the last years, and we'd like to continue to do that. But the key piece of this ingredient is to have a graduate assistant in place that truly feel that way. What it means to you as students is about 78 cents per semester, or $1.56 per year, for the funding request that we have of $19,504. So we're looking at 6.5 cents per credit hour, banded at 12 credits. That gets us to 78 cents per semester, $1.56 for the academic year. So with that, I stand for questions.
Any questions from MAVRIK Adventures? Senator Hoysa.
Is the graduate assistant the only certified health professional, like faculty member, who is attending these bike ride and other adventure programs?
Sam Steiger is a certified EMT, and he was also on site that day, but Elliot was with the group, but Sam was right there as well. So that's the important piece, and the mentoring that goes along with all that as well, with Sam as a certified EMT. Thank you.
Senator Roebuck.
So you talked about like having an overall like plan, and that this is like implemented in that plan. Do you know how it is? Like, because you talked about like space and stuff, and that an overall like campus rec plan.
So we're talking the long-range campus master plan as far as facilities go.
Yep.
That we're now on the master plan with an auto rec center expansion, and part of that expansion is MAVRIK Adventures office planning space, along with potentially a bouldering facility. That's long term.
Right. Yeah. So what does that master plan look like? Like, just kind of a ballpark, how many years?
I'd say a minimum. guessing a minimum of 5. When I look at long range, I look at 5 years out. Because we build a facility, then we still need to come to you as students for programming dollars, for staffing dollars, for things like that. But we look at the university helping out with the facility, because that's been a piece that's held us back in the past, right? Just no facility to house staff, supplies, equipment checkout, for canoes and stand-up paddle boards and kayaks and things like that. So we're starting small with these pilot programs, but we want to continue to increase the number of programs that we offer. But we want to make sure we do them the right way, and the right way is doing it safely and strategically. So Quinlan, I don't know if I've answered that question.
You did.
Uh-huh.
Senator Roebuck, I should say.
Senator Christensen.
So I just wanted clarification on Senator Polsett's question. You talked specifically about the bike adventure, but I think she was more asking about all of the programs that you've done. Is Seth and Elliot, are they always there?
They are. Yep.
Both of them, Sam, they're both there
Yeah,
every time?
I believe Sam was on all the programs that we've offered. He was at cooking, the hiking event that we had at Minneopa State Park. Snowshoe pilot program that we've offered this spring semester as well.
Thank you.
I do want to remind everyone that when you are asking questions, please use the microphone. It really helps us hear what you're asking and them. With that, we'll go to Senator Nowinski.
So you mentioned that the big appeal of having the graduate assistant is that they can hold certifications in specific skills that you don't expect that an undergraduate student to have. So in your hiring process, is there any language written that states that your graduate assistant has to be, for example, first aid and CPR certified? Are those actually written in there, or have you just gotten lucky with having really awesome GAs?
First aid, CPR, I believe, are written right into the job description.
Okay.
Highly recommended are these other skill sets. I don't have a job. I wish I had a position description. I failed to do that. I forgot to. But in our adventure education program job descriptions and the MAVRIK Adventures job description, it would be recommended that they have these certifications, but they need to have experience, ropes course, climbing walls in that respect. And then with a position like this, it would need to have experience in outdoor recreational programming, some risk management, things like that. But we're able to attract people that have long lists of certifications and experiences. For instance, Elliot, he's got experience with rock climbing and American Mountain Guide Association, something like that. I mean, you can help me out here, Elliot, but he's got a lot of extensive certifications and experiences that just add to what we can do and what we can offer, and really takes care of a lot of the risk management pieces.
Thank you.
Senator Garten. And, yeah, right.
So I just want to make a note, due to space, Sam has a lot of equipment stored in his office. Just for you guys' reference.
Is this a question or is this a point?
It's also a question. I just wanted to make a note.
Just questions.
Okay. So based on your amount of students you have working for you, not just for MAVRIK Adventures, but like overall campus rec, how many of those are RPLS majors? Because that's what they're targeting is RPLS majors in the staff recommendation.
Oh, I'd be guessing RPLS majors that work in campus rec. We've got about 150 student employees, a handful, maybe 5 to 10 between rock walls and general campus recreation and sports officiating, and group exercise and those areas. I'm guessing.
Okay, Senator Dahl, do you have a question? No, okay. Are there any further questions? Seeing none, that we're done with your report. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next for the invited speakers. So again, these are the people you guys asked to be here. We have students event team, and you guys have John.
Can I just explain real quick? Everybody was given a big copy of the recommendations that were handed out last week. The purpose of this is so that you can take notes. You know, there's a blank notes column, and then there's a green column that's also blank. So as we go along, you're going to be filling in those if you want to follow along, you're going to be filling in that green column that's last. So that's the purpose of this. And so, for example, in the one that I'm keeping right now, in the notes section, I just put appealed 19504 next to MAVRIK Adventures. If you want to keep track of what people are asking or take notes on that stuff, that is a good place to do it. So that's why you have this big one, okay?
Okay, we'll go back to the invited speakers. Again, remember these are people you guys asked to be here. So please ask them questions. They took time out of their day to be here for you guys. So ready with the student event team, again, 8 minutes for the appeal kind of slash presentation slash Q&A.
We're not appealing.
Yeah, I know they're not.
Yeah, we're not appealing the recommendation.
Yeah. So any questions for the students event team?
My name is Bill Torville. I'm actually the staff member who advises the student events team. I'll be here today talking. There's some other members from the team here in the gallery that if we have some questions, they can answer those as well. But after you guys' questions.
Any questions? Senator Dahl.
You hear me? Hear me?
No?
Sorry. I've only been here for 2 years. In terms of student events team, one of the big things you guys do is homecoming concert. In terms of having a big concert, and I think the last 2 years the person hasn't showed up. I don't know if it last year, but I know this year. Just this year. What are the for future in terms of next homecoming? What are your guys' goals for that in terms of making sure that doesn't happen? Because I know that obviously, yes, this is a very unfortunate thing. I mean, I couldn't go to the Freddie Wap concert because we had a football game the next day, but otherwise I would have been pumped. So, in terms of that, I know you guys are doing Chris Lane next. What are some big goals that you guys are having in terms of events?
In terms of your first question of what would we do differently to make sure they show up, there's nothing we could, to be honest. Nothing good, signed contract, everything's ready to go. I can't talk to the details because there's some possible pending litigation at this point. So I really can't discuss too much of what happened that day. Just know that we did everything that we could within our human ability to make sure that he was there that day. If you have questions, Natalie knows. She's been there for a time before.
I was the homecoming competition chair in 2015. So if there's homecoming questions, I can speak a little bit on that too.
Thank you, yeah. In terms of goals, obviously continue to bringing, I'll bring to this point. Unfortunately, Freddie Wap was the home run that was stolen away from us at the last second by the center fielder because that was the first time we've actually sold a significant amount of student tickets. We basically proved we bring a bigger artist, students are willing to pay for it. So that's how we can keep the SAC recommendation the same, subsidy the same, bring bigger artists, because we've got the proof in the pudding now that people are willing to pay a higher ticket price to bring someone bigger. So we're looking to bring a similar level artist. If we're to go on next step, you're going to start looking at $25, $30, $40 tickets, which we know most students don't want to do. But we'll continue to try to find a similar level of artist, whether it's pop, hip hop, country, R&B.
Senator Landon.
Could you describe,
Can someone pass the microphone down? If you see someone with the thing up, can you please pass it down?
You need one of those people like in the tennis courts that grabs the balls.
Yeah, you're right.
Now? It is. Hi. Could you please describe a little bit about the NACA conference and what you do to send students to that conference and why and what it brings back to the university?
Yes, every spring we budget to bring essential student personnel to an NACA conference. That conference is the National Association of Campus Activities. We take usually anywhere from 4 to 6 undergraduate students, myself, and then depending on the year, possibly my graduate assistant as well. This year, my graduate assistant, Alex Beck, is joining us because it's his first year, so he's going to kind of learn the ropes, and then maybe next year, depending on staffing, he might take them, I might not. But it's primarily a conference designed for students, undergraduate students, to learn about what other campus program boards do, to see artists, potentially try to book them. Did anybody go see Damien from Mean Girls? Yes. We actually got him there and got him at a pretty significant discount because we worked with other schools to save on travel. There's education sessions, but it's a great opportunity for those students who are in some of the large programming roles within the student events team to learn from their peers, present to their peers, and possibly select some acts. So we try to do that every year. Last year, actually, SAC recommended lowering the funding for that, which actually we accepted. Send the essential students, and so that's what we do. And we go. It's usually March, April every spring.
Any further questions for the students event team? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll now move into the reporter. Are they here?
The agenda that was shared gave them an approximate time, so that we're a little bit ahead of schedule from the agenda that was shared with people, so I can head down and see if they can be on their way.
Yeah, would you want us to move on possibly to the, or just wait?
I would explain your process for what it's going to look like. Go ahead and explain the process for once you actually get into consideration of the items.
Yep, so as John stated, he's going to go get the reporter. So the rest of the agenda, the final recommendations, the lower half of the sheet. That's when we'll start actually discussing the SAC recommendations. So the SAC recommendations are the baseline. So we'll start at that, and if you want to change it, you can amend that part, if that makes sense. But we'll start actually voting on the budget line items at that point of the meeting. And of course, we'll stop for yeah, we'll do a quick 2-minute break until John gets back. So just kind of don't leave the room, but just stay kind of close. And with that, we'll be 2 minutes. No. We'll get back to order here. We'll start with the reporter. They are not appealing, so again, they were invited here. You can start with a brief introduction, then we'll go to questions.
There's a switch, you gotta turn it on. Give it a second. No.
Hello? I'm Reed Cypher. I'm the advertising sales manager at the MSU Reporter.
Is there any questions? Senator?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, so the SAC recommendation, one of the things that they bring up is the fact of the gold parking passes, and they clearly lay out the map, and it says they need 13.75 full days of,
Give the mic.
Excuse me, I can't.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect, thank you.
You have to turn it on.
all right. Can you hear me?
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if you could speak to, the SAC recommendations, it says that they, want to take away some funding for the gold passes because it's not paying back itself. I'm just wondering if that simple equation was able to be done by SAC, how come the reporter has never done that equation to more effectively use student dollars?
That's a great question. In regards to allocating funds for the gold passes, the main reason that we have used gold passes in the past and continue to use gold passes is for flexibility between our schedule and the schedules of our clients. Knowing that all of our student employees who are ad sales reps have full-time student positions here on campus, so they have to kind of work around their class schedule, along with the other busy party being business owners who usually will only have very select times to meet with us. So the gold passes are the most convenient and make the most sense for us to reach our clients on a day-to-day basis.
And we'll jump down to Senator Revere.
Yes, I just had a question. If you guys know how much you guys, so you guys print Tuesday. Oh, yeah, sorry, I forgot. Oh,
Hi. So I was having a question. So you guys print Tuesdays and Thursdays, right?
Correct.
So you're printing for them. How much money do you spend on printing those papers so they're on campus? For how many copies you make? Or do you know like how much it is per copy?
I'm not aware of the per copy price that it costs us per paper.
Do you know like the amount it is then, like for your printing on Thursday, how much you spend on printing?
I mean, it varies on a weekly basis. It depends on the amount of color plates we have to purchase. So if an advertiser or a we have enough pictures in them, want the color for it, that can kind of dictate the cost of the paper, so it's kind of hard to determine an average cost.
Right, and then do you know for like how, sorry, I follow the question.
Yeah.
How much gets taken? Like when you put out on Tuesday and then you go to put out for Thursdays, how much are actually taken around campus?
Yeah, that's a great question, and we at the Reporters strive to be a sustainable, eco-friendly provider of news. So I'd like to say first of all that all of our paper is printed out fully recycled paper. Everything that is recovered by our printer in Medelia is then recycled into paper for future use. But to answer your question, the latest, I don't have the figures on me, but 65 and 67, we get polled twice a year by our printer in Medelia, meaning they get to see how many papers are remaining on the racks, and they deduce that from the total amount they put out, and that's called a pickup rate. So the two random samples they've done so far this year, our first time was 65% of our papers were off the racks in the hands of readers, and the second time was 67, which our printer in Medelia noted was a relatively high pickup rate for a paper in general, much less a small newspaper such as the Reporter.
I'm done, thanks.
Senator Moy.
Yeah, so I have a little bit of a two-parter. Are you aware that the lot that they're asking you to use, that's the visitor pay lot, is actually located right there, and it's just as convenient as a gold pass would be?
A little bit bias of a suggestion. I mean, convenience, yes, but cost effective, I'd say no. Because you are paid for coming and going from that lot on an hourly basis versus the one upfront cost for a gold pass is the only cost incurred through that method, to my knowledge. I'm going to be honest, we've had 24 hours. We didn't know we were appealing, or not appealing, being called in today, so we've only had 24 hours to prepare, so we haven't been able to get quite everything to answer your questions, but to my knowledge, it's more expensive over the course of a year between all sales reps to be coming and going, paying per each use of the pay lot versus the one upfront fee for the gold permit.
Okay, and then my piggyback question is going off of money efficiency. You spoke about the copies that are picked up. I recently asked for the numbers from the Reporter, and the 65 and 67% do sound good, except for if you note that on that Tuesday, $156 worth of papers were left over, and on that Thursday, $153 were left over. If you round that down, it's $300 a week, and over the course of the semester, that averages out to be $4,500 in student fees that were wasted.
Well, wasted, it's hard to exactly get the perfect amount to our students without having our racks be empty. And there's only certain levels that we can stock our shelves at. We can't put the precise amount ahead of time that we need for the students because we cannot predict the demand per se. So the options, when it comes to producing papers are 2, 3, or 4,000, and we go for what we consider to be ample for the demand you have without cutting our supply short.
So I just wanted to clarify.
Do you need another point?
I just needed to clarify. So just to clarify that you do aim on the higher end rather than budgeting towards the low end and running the risk of running out of paper. So you're printing more than necessary, is what you're saying.
Not intentionally. Like I said, we cannot predict the demand, so we predict the best quantity to meet the demand without letting our viewers be left without a paper.
Thank you.
Senator Robles.
Yeah, so SAC did recommend an increase for customer relationship management software. And I would just like you to elaborate on what that is, just for senators that did not hear that part of the presentation. SAC did.
Yeah, absolutely. So a CRM software is a way to pretty much keep all of our sales rep on the same page in terms of who's being contacted from our client list and the different stages of development within the sale, whether it's the initial contact, the follow-up, the closing a sale. But a CRM software ties in all the email conversations kind of into a sales pipeline. It helps with efficiency for a sales department, and a lot of any sales company that's Fortune 500, even small business will have some sort of CRM software in place. Typically what we've used in the past is just a Google Docs sheet that has all 2,000 plus of our clientele on it, and then other Google Docs sheets to record call logs. However, this software will kind of bring everything into one system and make sure everybody's kind of kept on the same page.
President Garden.
So
So just a follow-up question with that software. It sounds like a great idea instead of using a Google Docs. Would this need to be repurchased every single year? Would there be a maintenance fee? Because what you asked for was for that money to be put into the base instead of maybe like a 1 year increase. So that's what I'm just wondering, would it have to be, I think it was 16,000 for every single year forever, or would that number change over the years?
That's a great question. My editor-in-chief is the one who did kind of the more formal research on the price points for different CRM software, so I'll pass the mic over to David Bates, your editor-in-chief.
Hello guys, sorry for being here a little late. Just to give a clarification, the CRM software we're looking at costs about $25,000 to $30,000 for a one-time purchase with about a $9,200 support fee. However, if you were to go with a monthly subscription and tie it down to a year, that comes out to about $5,000 per year.
Senator Garten.
I have a question. Are your papers only like put on campus, or are they distributed elsewhere, like in the Mankato area or other, like Normandale, for instance, or anything like that?
So we distribute to not just Mankato, but to Quick Trip, Hy-Vee, and also the other Mankato campuses like Edina and Normandale, as well as downtown to the Hubbard building.
Senator,
Follow-up question.
Yes.
Are those number of papers about this, like, do they get pretty good pickups also, or is Mankato, like, MSU the largest?
So those numbers, we started those actually extra pickups to those other new locations pretty much recently in the past couple of years. However, we've seen an increase in requests from places like the Hubbard building, which is actually requesting us to put a stand there. Places like the Edina campus, which needs more papers. We send less than 10 to them, and we've had requests over and over. So next year, just working with our printing contracts, we're actually going to be establishing more stands and actually redirecting most of the pickup stands that we have, less pickup areas in the CSU now to those areas.
Senator Erickson.
Printing's been a question that we've been asking about, and I have the numbers here in front of me, and I just have a question on them. So originally last year for fiscal year 2019, well, this current year, you budgeted for approximately $71,000 for printing, but you only committed approximately $39,000 to printing. But now you're then again requesting for fiscal year 2020 the $60,000. Why wouldn't you go more towards the $39,000 that you actually committed?
Again, thank you for that question. A lot of printing has to do with the change in the surcharge that happened in October. And so with that change in price from the tariffs, that is not something we can control. The printer actually increased the price of our printing. And so in able to deal with unforeseen circumstances like that, we had to go on the mid-range. In that case, we had $71,000 last year. We only spent about $39,000. And so this year we dropped that down, and also to deal with the reduced amount of printing that we're going to be doing. So to do that.
Follow-up question?
Yes.
The $71,000 was committed for this current fiscal year. Just to let you know, I'm looking at the numbers, you're not. I understand, but have you used those numbers, the counting how many people actually pick up the papers, to reevaluate the money to actually put into the budget request for printing?
Yes, extensively. We actually did a lot of pickups myself and also with the printers. So they come in on a time not known to us to actually do counting. And we've had 65% on the Tuesdays and 67% on the Thursdays. And with that number, we decide to work with them and see a better printing quantity we could use.
We'll move to Senator Landis.
I just have something to clarify about my question.
Yeah, well, Staff Chair Brett.
Yeah, so in terms of the committed balance, one thing to keep in mind for those of you that aren't on staff.
Yeah. Will you stand up first?
Yeah.
We can hear you.
Yeah, so I just want
You have to turn it off.
Yeah, so I just want to clarify something. For the committed balance, that number is only what they've spent through December, and the fiscal year ends. So there's another like 6 months where that number hasn't been included yet. So don't get too hung up on what their committed balance is, because they still have a lot of that hasn't been reflected in those budgets yet. So that's what they're anticipating to spend in the whole fiscal year. This is only reflecting about half the fiscal year on your budgets. So that's just a clarification for that number.
And we'll move back to Senator Landis.
Hello? Will you defer to 2 quick questions?
Yes.
First off, I'd just like a clarifying question. President Cronin asked about software and mentioned a $16,000 figure of the increase between the base and the SAC recommendation. And you said that there is a couple of options, either a one-time purchase or a $5,000 per year subscription. So could you please clarify where the other $11,000 that is going to, as far as you know? That's my first question.
Yeah, sure. The remaining 11,000 actually goes to cover 3 basic things. That's the student payroll and the increase in the state salaries, which they increase about 8%, 7%, my bad. And also for our printing contracts to cover that as well. So those were the 3 major things that they covered.
Thank you. And then my second question, you mentioned those 2 options, either a $5,000 per year subscription or a range of, the low end being $25,000 plus a $9,000, so about $34,000. Could you estimate, if you did get that permanent license, how many years that software would be useful to you?
Can you clarify the question? Because when we get the license, that's only due for the version that we get. And so each time they have to come back and either update or upgrade, we're going to be paid that $9,200 each time, each year, I think.
So the $9,200 is going to be per upgrade, which you don't know what the schedule of that would be.
Per support, yes. So we pay that for the whole year. And basically the software, as of when I did the demo, as of yesterday, they actually released a new version of that software, or one of them already. So when you have the version that you pay per month, anytime they have like an upgrade or changes into the software, they do that for you free in there. All that's taken care of. But when you have the standalone perpetual license, you have to call them in, come in, and that's a cost that we will have to pay for the cost of bringing them in or training them on the new version of the software. And we don't have that in our budget yet to do with those amounts of expenses yet.
Thank you.
Senator Zellman.
Is this on? Oh, it is. Okay, perfect. Sorry, I'm not good with mics. Do you know how much is in your guys' reserve at all? I don't have that number in front of me. I was just wondering if you did.
I don't have it here with me. Perhaps it would be on the report of R&R fund, but I believe that should be 0. 10,000.
Senator Regina.
Hi again. So to go back to the printing, so you said that there was about 65% of paper being picked up. And you said that was pretty, like that was on the high end. But, so that's about like 40% of papers not picking up, and considerable that you're printing lots of papers. Do you guys have anything in mind or plans of maybe trying to get more papers? Because I know from personally and a couple other people I've talked to that 6% is still on the low side. So like you're doing like 40% waste, and like yes, it is eco-friendly with the paper, but it's like not eco-friendly when no one's reading it.
Just to clarify, the 60% actually is on the high-end rate for the top universities in the country. And I checked with 4 of the universities, Michigan State, University of Houston, University of Oregon, and that's actually higher than what they have, about 54%. And so being at about 65% pickup rate is high for a college university campus. We're in a digital era, so we're actually working with our design team to actually figure out new ways, like I said, to place our stalls in different new traffic areas. What we have currently right now is positioned for things that we're working in the past, and we've been working, seeing where students walk by, how they pick up the papers, how we do our advertisements, and also working with students here and some of the senators have been really great help to help us to pick that up. I don't know if I answered your question correctly.
Can I just have like one follow-up?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, you did answer, but I was just wondering if you think that if you printed maybe just a little bit less of the papers, then that percentage would go up, because then if you print less, the same amount is being taken, but then from the ratio of how much you're printing, it could be 70%, 80%, 90%, because you're not printing as much.
I'm sure that we could try that, but at the same time, that's also a very big point to make. Once you print less, you have more percentage of pickup rates.
Okay, that was it.
Senator Moy.
Hi again. So with Mankato having its own two papers, so the Free Press and the KEYC News, they utilize social media as well as online platforms to distribute their news as well in order to be paperless, essentially, and to be more eco-friendly. Why has the Reporter not done this?
So the Reporter has actually been doing that for quite a while now, actually about 7 years. And but the thing is that we were not very active on our social media aspect. So this year we ramped up our social media activity, and we've seen a triple in our web views. So actually we had our highest web views in January of 10,700 views. And on Instagram, actually, if you check, we've had over 200 posts only in the last semester alone, an increase in our social media presence. So we've also been on Snapchat as well as Twitter and Facebook and SoundCloud. So just to be on all those platforms as well.
That's great to hear. Thank you for that. Just a follow-up question. My question wasn't if it's online, it was distributing through an online platform, so such as email. So that wasn't the answer to my question.
Okay.
Senator Roman. All right.
Where are coupon books distributed? Like overall?
So coupon books are distributed in a couple ways. First of all, we put them out to incoming freshman students, not just in Mankato, but also in other 4 schools around campus to help us evaluate the admission process, so that we can actually reach out to advertisers in those areas of the community. The second way we give out the coupon books is on request. So students who have utilized the first coupon books coming to request a second one. And then thirdly, we actually go around and while we're distributing the paper as well, we distribute coupon books as well to the students.
Wait, so to clarify, do you distribute them to other universities in Mankato?
That's only one time during the beginning of the school year to attract more advertisers and also more people in the community to be aware of what we're doing at the Reporter.
Okay, what schools?
Rasmussen College, South Central, Bethany Lutheran, and Gustavus.
I do want to clarify real quick. What was just handed out was an updated agenda. When we originally printed the agenda, we did not have the back. So it's just accounting for what's on the back. Just clarifying. With that, are there any more questions? Senator Garfield.
Can I have a microphone?
Yeah, can we pass?
Yeah, we agree. Sorry. We like our microphone.
With that, if there are any last additions to the speaker list, please let me know now.
So if coupon books are being distributed to these other colleges, why are we paying for them?
Well, like I said earlier, it's more of a value addition process, and we don't actually distribute as much coupons that we have for our MSU campus students. I personally distribute the ones to MSU students, and so I think about 4,000 or 5,000 that we give to incoming freshman students, and that number is not up to 3,000 to all the other schools, and they only get a one-time delivery for them in that case. And just to give an idea, when we distribute one set of coupon books, we have way more than 50% turnover in terms of ad requests that come in. And that has been our biggest money maker so far, second to the Futures magazine that we released in the spring.
Follow-up question?
Yes.
Or comment, I don't know.
It has to be a question.
It's kind of a question, but a comment. So if these students are MSU students, so they're not paying the student fee that we are paying for the coupon books to be printed. So why should you be distributing them to those campuses if we're paying for them?
I'll give an example. So for example, like we had an advertiser call us from Bethany Lutheran College last semester 4 times to actually place an ad in our paper for a music award, for a TV, not for a TV, for a basketball tournament, and stuff like that. We were never able to get that presence on campus, especially during the semester when we were just starting our training. And you think of it as a way of giving back to the community, of adding value to the community that we're in. And 4,000 coupon books, we do know it's a lot, but the turnover, the return that we get from it is higher than what we give out.
Senator Landis. And again, if you want to get added to speakers list, I will close it here in a second. So please make eye contact. Yep, she is on.
I appreciate that, David, you just, oh, okay. That's fine. I appreciate that you just talked about, return on investment in relation to the coupon books. I have a similar question in relation to the customer relationship management software. Have you run any projections as to what gaining that software is going to return to the business? Because, Recorder is a business as much as it is anything else. And just wondering, is it projected to cover some costs, or if you have any ideas as to how that will improve the reporter?
Yes, that's a very good question. And our ad sales manager here, Reed, this semester, we spent about half the time that we were supposed to spend on selling ads, we spent on training. And training is very important to us because we're a learning environment. And so that time that we spend on training our new ad sales reps and getting them acquainted with the customer and getting them acquainted with the business and cold calling, those are times that we would spend being productive actually selling more ads. And we've already anticipated at least a 50% increase in our productivity rates. And because that helps us being able to manage, whoever's going to be the ad manager can actually manage from, depending on where they are, whether it's by mobile, by app, or in the desktop, you can actually do a lot of this management of your sales team on the go, and not have to baby them, one after the other. Because once you've trained them, they're pretty much stellar. They're pretty much sharp guys. And we've had to lose ad sales rep this year, not just to graduation or like stuff that happens in the semester, but we've had bigger companies coming to poach our ad sales team. And although we're very excited about that, but it does set us back a little bit because we have to have smaller papers, we have to have lesser ad inches sold. And so we do anticipate a very big increase when we have a customer relationship management software.
May I have a follow-up?
Yes.
Oh, would it be safe to say that you anticipate that the cost of this software will pay for itself eventually?
In the long run, I see there is a very big benefit to it because having an ad sales management software, if it costs, I'm going to use the ballpark figure I used earlier on. If you have about $5,000 worth of software, and in the end of the day, you're bringing in 50% more than what you're bringing in now, I would say that covers whatever you put into the management of the software.
Senator Popsill.
Pospish. Yep.
Just kidding.
It's like it's spelled. Okay. So, my question is quite broad, but I would just like to ask this to give you a footholding in this conversation. So, do you have any comparative numbers as to what other schools in our system are doing? Is what you're asking reasonable, and why? Like, do other schools in our system, because you gave examples of other schools, but they're vastly different than a school, they're not even in our state. So, do they have this software? Are they doing the coupon book? What is their data on how they're doing their papers? Could you speak to that?
A little bit. So the schools I mentioned, those are schools that are 4-year schools doing bi-weekly papers. And in the terms of production-wise, some of those schools are using the system actually very, very well. I've spoken to only 2 of them so far out of the 4. I just got their numbers in terms of their pickup rates. And so when it comes to how the CRM software helps them deal with ad sales and production rates, it has actually tremendously helped them in being more flexible in how they operate. Does that answer your question?
Are there any?
Yeah, follow up, yeah.
Okay. So I guess that what I'm asking is there anybody else in the Minnesota system using the software?
Not with the vendors I've checked with, but the vendors I've checked with, they have customers all around the country. And we, last month we had a convention where we had to speak with not just people from Minnesota, but we had people from the Midwest. And we got to talk to people who are actually using these customer relationship softwares and how they actually benefited them if they're, not just this one, but how it has actually benefited them. So to answer your question, this exact software we're looking at, not many schools in Minnesota have used it, but a lot of schools around the country have used it, and those are the schools that we're comparing with.
Okay, so with that, you spoke to the software information, but are you in communication with the other newspapers in the MSSA system and how their school is functioning and how they're doing things? Like, do they do the coupon books? Are they functioning at the same rate? You know.
A lot of them are not student-run, so that's one thing that I applaud you guys all here for being able to keep that running, because being student-run actually gives that independence of what you can actually say and the freedom of speech. And so a lot of them are not student-run; they're actually run by other faculty or other colleges or whatnot. And so that's one thing I've discussed with them, whether it's St. Cloud or community college around. And I think that the ones who are student-run, those are the ones that I'm actually in tighter communication with, because then we can actually have more common ground to the issues that we face.
We'll now go to Senator Moy.
Oh, yeah, so I have a question. I don't know whether you have an answer for that or not, but do you know that what kind of benefits or like returns we get as we give the coupons to other colleges?
Sorry, can you say that again?
Yes, so what kind of returns or benefits do you think that we get as we give the coupons to the other colleges?
So like I said earlier, the returns that we get is actually, for example, I'm using myself as an example. Let's say I'm not an Mankato student and I get to see the Minnesota State coupon book, and I get to see and use your coupon. As a business, I get to ask myself 2 questions. Do I want to increase my sales? Do I want to get more exposure to, not just to Mankato students, but around the community? And if the answer is yes, I actually call up the report office and actually place an ad to be in the next coupon book. And that's why the coupon pages have been increasing. That's why the distribution has been increasing, because we've had a lot more advertisers who want to be in the coupon book because they know the benefits of the coupon book, not just in Mankato, not just in MSU, but all around Mankato, and not just smaller chains, but actually larger businesses actually wanting to advertise in there. And that has actually helped us with floating up our rates, so it has helped us increase the rates on the amount that we can actually gain from it.
Last question goes to Senator Moy.
But then, just to clarify, the rate that we actually send out online is actually 1,800. I made a mistake when I said 4,000 earlier.
Yeah, so my last question is, with a budget of $70,000, it's safe to say that you represent Minnesota State University Mankato, is that correct?
That's correct.
And then I just wanted you to comment on your editing procedures, because I, as well as fellow students, have noticed some quite sexually alluding quotes in your paper, as well as
Does this pertain to the budget? I'm going to say no, just because we're trying to ask questions that can help you decide to give them money or not. But I'll say no. With that, that was the last question on the speaker list. Thank you very much. And we'll now move down to the final recommendations part of the agenda today. Again, this is where we'll discuss and vote on the recommendations before you guys. Like I said earlier, everything the whole budget is in motion, so we'll start with the SAC recommendation, and if you want to change, I will ask if there's any dissent, you'll say yes, and then we'll discuss and or amend that line item. We'll go line by line, so please, it'll be helpful when you have both the pink out and the white one, the white sheet. That's the agenda. And John will be updating the sheet as we go along. We will have to pass the budget as a whole. Is there any questions about the rest of it? Yes. President?
And just a reminder, the pink narrative was sent out in email as well as an electronic copy of the blue binder. So I see the blue binder over there. So if you want it, you can look at the physical copy, or you should have received an email with access. So for those of you who have a computer in your backpack or out with you, I suggest looking at that instead of trying to get the binder passed to you.
And as John said earlier, he did give you guys a big sheet to fill in notes and update that column too on your sheet of paper. It will also be on the screen as noted. And when you are speaking, please make eye contact and leave your placard up so I know that you're still on the list. And when you want to make another comment, please ask. Don't just start making another comment. Oh, sorry, it's a green packet for you guys, not a white one. I was giving it. Some of them pink, some of them are green, some of them are white.
The green one was a narrative of what the organization's all about.
Okay.
The pink one was the actual recommendation from staff.
Yep. Just both of them combined. And so we will go down line by line as is listed on the agenda. Are there any further questions? Senator Zilber.
I just have a question about how you'll be proceeding. So, in relation to speakers list, will you be doing anything with precedence and recency as described by Robert's rules, or are you just picking them as placards go off?
As placards go up, I am taking a list of who I see.
Of who you see?
Yeah.
Then could I just support a recommendation to just kind of look at precedence and recency, so if someone's only spoken once, go to them before someone that's spoken 10 times?
I can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Are there any further questions about tonight, John?
Also, just when it comes to parliamentary procedure, you get to speak twice on each item.
Yeah. The reason why we allow that for questions because it's questions, but on motions, just keep it twice, keep it short. Yes. Senator. Sam. Oh, okay. Yes, I don't know. Yes. The snapping is so we do, quiet snapping. If that helps. It is part of the etiquette. We don't want to speak more like if everyone agrees, you want to snap to that. So instead of everyone saying they agree on something, but yeah, just try to keep it down so other people can. If that makes sense. With time permitted, we'll continue on the agenda and continue. We'll go to campus rec MAVRIK adventures. That is line item 14 on the big sheet. And the staff recommendation. The SAC recommendation is $11,000. Is there any dissent to the SAC recommendation? $11,000. Senator Young.
I do not believe that that is enough for the budget. This is the correct time to speak on that.
Yes.
Correct? As they brought up, forgot about the mic. So as brought up in their appeal, they are appealing for less than they originally asked for, but I'm going to push for what they originally asked for. Cutting this GA, I believe, would inherently cut the program in a few years because the GA inherently, as it seems, kind of runs the program and makes sure that everything goes over well. They have seen, although they repeated one event, if you repeat an event that's successful and you continuously get more people, I don't think it's wrong to repeat that event. Like we have a homecoming concert every year, it gets more popular, we shouldn't just cut it because we want something new. And since they are putting on 7 events when we only asked them to put on 6, I do believe that the GA is necessary. And I do think that we should go for their original request of $20,504. Should I make that amendment now or should I wait?
I just want to make a point. The appeal wasn't for $20,000; it was for $19,000.
Can we go towards what they originally asked for?
You fill out a sheet, yes. Please fill out the sheet. But yeah, you make a motion.
Okay, so should I amend it now?
Yes.
Okay, so I'd like to amend the SAC recommendation to $20,504.
Is there a second? Senator?
I second that.
And please fill out the sheet and pass it back up. On the amendment, Senator Akinton, or, do you want to speak on the amendment?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, Senator White says that.
I do think that Maverick
Hold on,
Adventures.
hold on.
I'm pretty loud, but I can do this.
I think that the passion from this program is something really admirable and something that does make our school great. I would encourage all of you, though, to consider your constituents. I have been sitting in office hours when I talk about the budget and I say Maverick Adventures is one of the programs that's considering having its budget cut. And every person I've talked to has been, what's Maverick Adventures? Which is hard to say because I do think people who do it do a fantastic job, but does it warrant this much money of an increase for a program that in the end for my constituents, the incoming freshmen, are not excited about, not using, and aren't showing up for. I don't like increasing the budget. I don't like having to ask students who are already struggling and in debt to have to pay for more things, so I would encourage you to have to try and find a place where we're not going to ask them to pay for more money. And the truth is that half the year, it looks like this outside, and people are not going on bike rides, and people don't want to go snowshoeing because it's cold. And this is, I don't think, the best use of our money for the students who we are all asked here to represent today, and who are going to be paying for this program in the end.
Senator Kintan is next.
All right, also to go off the point Senator Isaac just made, I also like to agree with that fact that since it's such a very underrepresented program, not a lot of students know about Maverick Adventures, so I don't believe it warrants that much increase. I believe the 11,000 recommended is fairly enough actually, because just like the SAC recommended, the biggest thing is programming, and I feel like they have 5,000, which is an increase for programming, which would be the biggest. I feel like that would be the biggest stride they could make, is to make the programs better for the students before a GA is funded.
Next is Senator Garten.
All right, so I just want to make a point that what the profit is, or what SAC is trying to cut is the GA position, and are recommending reaching out to RPLS students. As an RPLS student, I would not have time to do the amount of work that Elliot does to put on these programs. The risk management, the planning, currently with caving, I mean, we're having to do travel requests, insurance for going out of state, all of that. I would not have time to do that on top of my workload that I have for programs. So I just want you guys to keep in mind, and they are only budgeting for one RPLS student, which I don't believe is enough to work what is being put into.
I'll yield to Brett.
We didn't specify how many student workers it We didn't specify how many workers, we just specified a certain amount of money. So if it ends up being one person who puts in more hours, or it could be two people putting in less hours, it'd be however they'd be willing to distribute that money within that budget.
Okay, but what you put in the recommendation is...
Is that a follow-up?
Yes.
Yep.
What you put in the recommendation is $6,000 coming from an estimated $10 an hour, which is the lowest price on campus, making less than what any other campus rec person is making for 20 hours a week for $200 per week, and that's one person. So that $6,000 is for one person at $10 an hour for 20 a week.
If they work 20 hours a week, but like I said, if they end up working 10, another person working 10, it can be split among two people. My point is that it wasn't just for one person, it could be multiple. It's however they decide to split it up. I hear your point, and I'm not disagreeing with you, I'm just saying it could be more than one.
Next on the list is Senator Dahl.
I am for this amendment as well, with whoever motioned it and seconded it. In terms of, this really brings a diversity to our campus. Instead of just, art, band, student events team, athletics, Greek life, all the things that there is, this is something huge for us. I mean, yes, Senator, what you said? Yes, you said that, it is cold out, it is, no one likes going outside, it's raining, all that stuff. But me as an outdoorsman, I would love to go ice fishing with my fellow students. You know, if I could go snowshoeing, go tubing, go skiing, all these things. And in terms of the GA, which is kind of one of the big concerns, for the athletic department and for the strength training for all the athletics, we have one strength coach that does all 20 teams, or 21 teams if you count the Division I hockey, or 22 with both. We have one coach. All the other guys are all GAs. We have one GA teaching us whole football team. So GAs are very important in terms of, you know, making things happen. And honestly, sometimes GAs are more important than who's the main guy in charge in reality. You know, just in terms of a GA, you know, I just think that this is huge for Maverick Adventures in terms of, you know, bringing a lot of diversity to our campus and having a lot of new things that can happen with, you know, our campus. If we happen to cut this and the GA stops, we're basically cutting the head off the snake. And the master plan that's going to happen for auto rec probably won't happen then. So the future of MSUs for campus rec probably won't ever happen.
Senator Erickson is next.
Okay, so the word about constituents was brought up, and I would like to make a note, because not all of you received this email. A constituent of mine who's a graduate student, she lives off campus, and she's in the College Valley Health and Nursing. She emailed pretty much all of the senators that represent her. She was unable to be here today because she is sick, and she didn't want to get all of us sick, and I am happy about that. But she heard about Maverick Adventures for the first time 3 years ago, and she explains that whenever she explains to her friends about Maverick Adventures, they don't know what it is right away, but they're super excited to learn more, and when they go to the events, they enjoy them. She then explains, and I'm quoting her, Sam and Todd both have full schedules with their regular workloads as employees of Campus Rec, but in addition still choose to volunteer their time to this passion. This isn't their job. They're volunteering their time. This is why they need a GA. And in the staff recommendation, they state that they believe that the program has not made enough strides to continue to warrant a GA. Last year when we funded them, mind you, that was the first time that they had been funded to run programs. They were asked to put on 3 programs a semester. They did 3 programs fall semester, they're putting on 4 this semester. They not only have met these expectations, but they have exceeded these expectations. Yeah, that's my comment.
Senator Christensen is next.
Alrighty, so I am also in support of this amendment, and I think the key word here is diversity. This absolutely brings diverse, not only sports, but just adventures and experiences to students at MSU. And I think the numbers kind of show for themselves that with each event, the numbers are getting higher and higher. Students are enjoying this. There's a reason why those numbers are going up. If it was failing, those numbers would be going lower. So I think that kind of speaks for itself too.
Senator Kincaid, I had you on the list.
I just have a question. So I was just wondering, so let's say the SAC recommendation just stay the same. I was just wondering, what would that mean for, like, in terms of I think my question was next.
I was going to say, yeah, that would be a time to ask. We could have asked them when they were here. We'll continue with Senator Nowinski.
Okay, I believe that I'm also in favor of Senator Zellmer's amendment. I see your argument about recognition, but I think that if we cut the funding for the GA, that I believe that the program will likely lose recognition and eventually die, because I think that the campus recreation and Maverick Adventures staff explain that they don't think that they can safely and effectively perform their programming without a GA with the proper qualifications. So for those reasons, I think that we should have the GA, as well as I think that the Maverick Adventures GA position provides a very unique educational opportunity for people like Elliot and prior GAs that I've encountered. And that's what we're trying to do here at Minnesota State, is educate people, and I think that they'll go on to have great careers. And I think for those reasons, I support the amendment.
Senator Lambs.
I'd just like to add another point in the discussion between hourly undergraduate workers and graduate assistant position for this. I'm speaking from the perspective of a wilderness professional. For those of you who don't know, I do have professional experience in wilderness therapy. I've also gone and conducted some of my own trips. I'm a ski instructor. I'm a National Ski Patrol member. And I do think that the recommendation is a little misguided in what the actual main responsibility of a graduate assistant in an outdoor adventure program is. It is not programming, it is risk management, it is safety. And that level of expertise and experience and the credentialing that the graduate assistants bring don't cost nothing. It does take a while to earn these certifications. You can't just pick up and pluck someone out and say, you're going to work 5 hours a week, and then the next person you're going to come in and work another 5 hours a week and build on the plan, and then the third person you're going to work another 5 hours a week. It is important to have someone, a point person for risk management purposes, and that is the #1 priority of Elliot's position, not programming.
Senator Reed.
Hi. I just wanted to point out that for most of you senators, you guys come to the meetings, that they have been here every time almost. So they are coming to here telling us about their event. So as they grow, they're going to be promoting it, because there's some of you guys have concerned that not a lot of people know about it, which is true, but now that they're growing more, people are starting to get to know more about it, and as they continue to grow, more people will come and see, and just that they are committed to it, and they, like I said, they just like to mention that they are here almost every Senate meeting.
Speakers list is open. Any further discussion? Oh, sorry, Senator Rojas.
All right,
I have a few things. First, I want to speak on quick past reference for the organization MAVRIK Adventures. They came a couple of years ago, the first time, and asked for $200,000 to fund this, and Senate said no, and then they came back the next year and at least asked for the GA, and Senate gave them that. My question to Todd was about, or to Todd Nixon, was about the master plan. He said that it would be about 5 years, and I should have asked for clarification on if that was yes, in 5 years that would probably happen, or if it was 5 years or more. It doesn't necessarily clarify if there would be a building in 5 years for it, or in 5 years they would start building it. So that was a little hard to gauge. Another comment I want to say is this is an ad hoc program, right? This is not necessarily like a program. One thing that SAC said to not recommend was $1,000 to GA development, which is like a conference that they go to, explained by Senator Landis. He talked about some of the different experiences that you learn and different things that you can bring back. But he very specifically talked about a lot of job offers he got. And the reason why I would recommend this is that I don't think it's benefiting to students. It's more so benefiting to the GA. It's not about you should be going for the job opportunities and job offers you get, because that's specifically benefiting one person. I want to hear that you're bringing back those experiences. Note on the diversity comments that keep going around, and that brings tubing, ice fishing, snowshoeing to campus. These adventures are things that other clubs and organizations already do. We have tubing with student events team. I can guarantee that some of our clubs and organizations do some of the other events that were listed. A little clarification on the RPLS thing. The reason why we brought that up at SAC was because we feel that this is more of a club than a serious program. A lot of the things that MAVRIK Adventures does are things that clubs do. An outdoor cooking thing is a thing that a club could do, and that's yeah. I just can't. I can't see why we would spend $20,000 on a program to do 7 programs that a club could do. Why are we spending student fee dollars on a program that won't be able to truly grow and improve to support students the way that they would like to for at least 5 years. Why are we funding a GA? Purely for the idea that it gives one student an experience to put on their resume. I'm not saying that's exactly what their main purpose is for doing it, but that's kind of what it feels like right now. I mean, we asked them to grow from last year, and the comment about that they're coming to meetings every week and talking. I feel as a student last year who was not a senator, I feel like I heard more from MAVRIK Adventures. I knew much more about MAVRIK Adventures. And they are not necessarily, Elliot is coming to the meetings, but I feel like the updates and stuff have definitely dropped. I haven't even actually been hearing about them for a couple of months, really. And my recommendation is to at least like lower it in some way and make it, I mean, this is basically a club. A very small organization. And I believe it would be better use for student use if MAVRIK Adventures was implemented when we actually have a space on campus to fund and store it, which will be in 5 or more years. Yeah, with that I yield.
Next on the list is Senator Lewinsky. No, okay, Senator Landis.
I'd just like to respond to a couple of points that Senator Roebuck brought up, particularly one where my words were cited, but I think a bit mischaracterized. We will certainly be talking about professional development opportunities later on in this meeting, but I do want to clarify that the main purpose of professional development funds is to grow programming, is to maintain a level of professionalization that can be brought back to the university and that can be shared with other staff and that can be reflected in our programming. And there is, yes, of course, an added benefit of networking, 100%. That'd be, of course, I'm not going to deny that. But that is not the purpose of it. And then the second thing that I'd like to clarify, the question of why not a club, kind of going back to the risk management purposes. The vision for this organization is not just to do outdoor cooking, is not just to hike in Minneopa. That is part of what we've done as pilot programming without the resources to go and do major trips yet. However, the risk management plans that are being put in place, that are being developed by the graduate assistants, are important groundwork pieces so that someone can come in and actually start, when the funds in the space are there. Why not a club? It's actually universities, industry-wide universities are actually seeing their outdoor adventure programs that are run by students. They're actually cutting them. And the reason is risk management purposes. There have been deaths. Penn State had one recently. There have been, at my alma mater, Binghamton University, there was a death several years ago when I was there. So the reason why it isn't just a club is because the risks are real when you're doing caving, when you're doing rock climbing, when you're doing canoeing, and you need people in position that understand those risks and have the life experiences to recognize those risks and be able to mitigate them.
Senator Kintan is next.
I also just like to echo a little bit of what Senator Roebuck said. So in terms of the RPLS measures, I still believe there could still be a way for those students that are interested in the idea involved students might not be willing to do it, or they might not, because I feel like if they're put in a position, I feel like it's a way for them to get an experience in that position, especially if it has to do with the measures. And I feel like that's something where it could be beneficial to the students instead of just employing a GA who's you mentioned. The GA is also going to get experience from it, but the GA also has prior experience. So why not just get a student that's looking for experience that would just be willing to do it for a lesser price then, instead of employing a GA that would take a higher price. That's all this is. And it's not, there's also this perception that's been going on that I'm not against the program, like definitely not against the program. I also just don't believe that cutting the GA is cutting the program. I believe that just like us looking at our constituents in terms of us trying to reduce the amount of pay, like paying $6, like almost $6 per credit hour for a program that they might not even know about. So that's one point.
Senator Carter.
All right, I have a few points to make. So regarding it being a club, there is a club within our PLS. It's called Rec Club, and I am actually the president of that club. And that is strictly ran by students. As our PLS students, we're learning how to program. We have classes based on how to program. As a GA, they already have this information. So where we would be starting from the very beginning on how to advertise, how to reach out to other students, the GAs already have this information and can whip it out like that. They don't have to be trained, they have the certification and all that, where our PLS students are learning in their time. To go about saying that they haven't made announcements, we have made announcements, but because of the timing of when our programs are, we don't want to announce it too early in advance to the point where you guys aren't talking about it. As senators, it's our job to talk to our constituents about the programs, to get Maverick Adventure informed and put out there. And as I know, a lot of these senators probably don't do that. Me, as the chair of Maverick Adventures, it's my job to try and get that information out there. And also as a club, clubs don't provide equipment. Literally the description of Maverick Adventures is a blend of out-of-classroom opportunities that enables personalized growth and experiences through an outdoor rental center, trips and travel programs, and a variety of educational clinics and certifications. That's not a club. That is a program. And then again, to reiterate what Senator Erickson said, this is not Sam and Todd's job. This is not in their job description. They are doing this because they want this program to take off and to see it grow. And from being 3 years ago, I've seen it grow. I mean, the first year, there was nothing. Last year, they had programs, and it's continuing to grow. Like we said, we have 7 programs this year versus the 6 that you guys informed us to do. Thank you.
Next is Senator Bill.
So, just rebuttal off of what you guys all just kind of said and then add a little bit more. The big thing that I'm trying to reach out, in terms of agreeing with this amendment is just give them a chance, you guys. I mean, in reality, this is an awesome, a diverse adventure that people can go on. This could really, at one point, this could maybe be one of the recruitment things for students to come here. Hey, we go on canoe on Minnesota River. We go out to Lake Washington, we go ice fishing, we do all these challenges, there's so many bright things that could happen with this. And another thing too is, if you guys don't really know what this is or you're against it, try it. In reality, have you ever went skiing? I've never went skiing because my feet don't fit in it, but it's just, it's fun things, and like Senator Garten said, Garten, whatever, sorry. Like she said, it's not Todd and Elliot's job to do this. If we're not going to fund the GA, in reality, this program probably isn't going to have very much success of surviving. And like I said, the master plan of having an expanded auto and having all these cool canoes and stuff, in reality, that probably ain't going to happen because they're going to go, well, we don't even have it really. So if we keep showing that this program is growing and it's evolving, this is going to happen, and this could be a big thing for our students in the future of MSU.
Before we continue with the list, I do want to say, remember, it is 2 per person for speaking rights. I am keeping. Next is Senator Zelma.
Are you sure you want to recognize me before the 2 senators who haven't spoken yet?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to talk about something that was brought up about how much would be paid for a GA. So SAC is recommending that we do $10 an hour for 20 hours a week. Maverick Adventures got up here and talked about how many trainings and certifications that they have. Like, I'm a lifeguard, so I have like lifeguard training and everything. I would not take a lifeguard position when I was 16 for $10 an hour. Because lifeguards, I get $12 an hour, so if I'm offered below 11, I'm not gonna take it and I'm gonna take my trainings elsewhere. The same is gonna happen when we have someone that's a certified EMT, that the amount of hours that go into that training and as many research as you need, because once you get a certification in like first aid and CPR, it expires. So for lifeguard, I need to go back every 2 years. That research cost me $250. If they're only getting $10 an hour, 20 hours a week, they have to pay out of pocket for their research, and their recertification is gonna cost more than they make in a week. And we can't be expecting highly trained people that know about risk management, that actually know how to run these programs to the level that we need to take a job when they can go elsewhere and get paid in amounts that are almost double what we are offering them. So we can't expect to keep people that are actually trained.
Senator O'Carr.
Okay, just to touch on what Senator Poisey said. We said that the program has grown. Really, I would just like want to know what are the numbers, like how much of a growth have we had in the program? And also talking about like having more events go on. There are possible co-partnerships you could have with other organizations that could help in promotion of like information about like what events will be going on with like the MAVRIK Adventures program. And also, if we increase up to 20,000 now, I believe it sets the bar high for then a possible increase later on in the future. And then this would affect the student fees. So these are things we have to look at considering our constituencies. And also talking about like the GA positions, like I know for the Student Health Education Office under like the SHAC committee, like we have like a GA for the Health Education Office, and we just have like one GA. And then we do have possible positions for like internship programs for students within like the health education program, the public health program, and nursing and all of that, to be possible interns that could also help with the work for the student health advisory committee and all of that. So looking at giving possible internship opportunities to like students who are in the RPLS program, this would also help like promote and help and reduce like allocating more funds for like the GA. So this is something we should also think about.
Senator Poisey is
We touched a lot about the word diversity for people who are very for this amendment. We already have outdoor education programs. There's a major that's specific to this. I don't think it's necessarily diverse because the people who are wanting to do it will already be doing it. I think that also the other point that's been being made is that the GA has specific training that will reduce health risks. I asked the question to Tom when he was up here. He said that Sam is already there. He already has those trainings. We wouldn't be doing the trips if he wasn't there and wasn't ready to protect people. So I would hope that he has those trainings and would be able to run them since he's there to be able to cover that need and not have the students have to pay extra for it. And then the last point I want to make before you vote on this amendment is that I want you to think about underneath your placard who it says you're representing, because I think that you all can be really psyched for this program and think it's really cool for you and you want to do it. But think about the thousands of students who will have to be paying this money who don't want to do it and who don't want to fund, I mean, essentially your hobby, like the thing that you want to do outside of school. Because that's not, I mean, I don't think that many off-campus students are going to be doing it. I know that not many on-campus students are doing it, and that the $20,000 that it's asking for in the end isn't going to be supporting the people who we're representing here today.
Next is Senator Bale. Say it. Again, I'm new.
So I just wanted to add a quick comment because I see the issue of risk management and safety being brought up a lot. And I actually attended one of the programs by MAVRIK last semester. It was another dam bike ride on October. I attended with a lot of my friends, and I don't know if this was brought up, but there was actually an accident during the program, and two of the girls ended up running into each other within the bikes. One of the girls was sent to the clinic and she had to take stitches or get stitches. The other girl is still getting therapy in her knee. So I don't know if this is already being addressed or not, and as the program keeps growing, there's going to be more risks of management and safety. So we should look this into the future because we may need more funding, or I just wanted to bring it up since a lot of you have talked about it and there's a lot of risks that involve adventures outside and that type of activities.
To clarify, I'm closing the speakers list. The only two people left are Senator Erickson and Redemus, the last two. We'll go with, oh, I did, sorry. We'll go to Senator Erickson right now.
All right, so mention of RPLS students keeps getting brought up over and over and over again, and then even the new idea of having it as an internship. What Senator O'Hara is speaking as for the student health services, what their intern that they provide for the community health education program, that's my major. That meets the requirements for our internship, and it is an amazing opportunity. They offer it to one student and only one student a semester. For MAVRIK Adventures, this would not meet the requirements for an RPLS internship or any major internship. And also that student would not have the qualifications needed for these, for what the program needs, the risk management, how to plan a program, how to get the word out. The grad assistant is trained in all of this. They have that under their belt. They have those qualifications. And again, constituents keep getting brought up. As I mentioned earlier, an email was sent out. That constituent, she falls under off-campus, graduate studies, College Valley Health and Nursing. Please make sure that you remember your constituents, just like Senator Hoyseth has said. And again, then a 5-year plan that was mentioned by Todd. The plan to expand MAVRIK Adventures building-wise, he said that he was going to look to the college for that. This fee, that's not in the 5-year plan. That's not going to be the building. This is just for the GA and programs. That's not what the 5-year plan's for. That's just a plan, that's an idea. They're going to be looking for money for that elsewhere.
Senator Redemus.
Yeah, hi. So if I got this correct, but like for the money part, for how much you're paying if you're not interested, or I know that, so it's like less than a quarter if you think about it per credit, if I have that right. So it's not, like I know like money adds up if you're trying to think that if it's going to be so much, and it's like open to everyone who can go. It's not really like just for certain people and other people are paying for it for other people to go. Like our constituents can go if they want to, and if we just keep pushing that out there, think that it's good for them, and it's like less than a quarter. And then also with the GA and everything, that's risk management. I think that's a huge factor. That, oh, not me, sorry, okay. A huge factor, as in like, it's fun what you're doing, caving and like climbing and stuff, but it's not fun when like someone dies or like gets hurt, you know, so you need that GA that has the training to be able to know and help, and that risk management is a huge thing for, you know, like I wouldn't want to go climbing if I knew that someone wasn't there that knows the most and have that GA for you. And then, yeah, that there is a student events team that has tubing, but one student events team doesn't put on every single thing, or like some clubs that MAVRIK Adventures does, and that's just like a lot of work of chasing for, and for student event, student events team. Yeah, that's what I got.
Last speaking point goes to Senator DG.
I think at this point we can all agree that the planning and logistics of the MAVRIK Adventure is not touched yet. And we can also agree that the success of MAVRIK Adventure almost depends on having that GA, who's going to spend most of his time focusing on the success of these adventures. And at this point, I just want to recommend that we move forward with voting, because we could always come back. Next fiscal year, we can have the MAVRIK Adventure come up, talk about the success of the GA, bring back the increase in numbers. If the GA, iron of that GA is a success, and the next fiscal year we can debate whether or not to keep that GA for this. But for now, I think since the success of Maverick Adventures is almost dependent on having that G, we should just give them this trial, or let them have the G and see what the G is doing.
Okay, now we will vote on the amendment. Yeah.
So to limit the speakers list, because there were other speakers that were about to raise it before you limited it, it's not up to the decision of the chair, it's a 2/3 majority vote.
We can do
Are you
speakers
going
list
to motion
with extensions, real quick?
with an extension?
Like
You don't need to
whoever wants to
extend it.
re-add it to it, they can be added to it right now.
Okay, I was just wondering if you were motioning to limit the speakers list, because none of us voted on limiting the speakers list, and I was aware of other senators that wanted to still speak on it.
We've just been repeating ourselves, but yeah, we can definitely keep going until the question.
Well, even if you're repeating yourself, you still need a motion in order to do that. So I was just making
Yeah, we
sure
can
everyone's
continue
voice
with the
is
speakers
heard.
list if that's consent with everyone, if everyone's okay with that, am I good? Yeah, okay, we'll go to Senator Big.
Down to the mic, please.
Yep.
And if you want to get added to the speakers list, please raise them now.
Okay, I'm going to try and keep this short. So, Senator Hoyseth said something about funding the different adventures and thinking of it as a hobby, which is a really good way, and I think it's a good outlet for students. But we also need to think about the other programs that we're funding that people aren't attending. Not everyone's going to the football games. Not everyone wants to be in forensics. So we need to think about the fact that this is a good opportunity, but it isn't also an outlet for students that don't want to go to other events on campus.
Senator Roebuck.
Okay, I want to clarify that I never said that it should be a club. I said that it was like a club. I understand risk management, and frankly, I would like to not hear about risk management again, because we have talked about risk management a lot, and I think we all understand risk management by now. And I'm not saying that sarcastically, I really think we do. And the main point that I'm really going to hit on here, and this is going to be my last point about it, is that we do not have space for this. Senator Garten talked about the overall message or whatever of Maverick Adventures, talking about that it is a program because it talks about having rental things, but the really only thing that you can rent right now is hammocks and bikes. So already that's misleading to to students, because we don't have things, a whole bunch of different things that we can rent to them right now, because we don't have the space for all of that stuff. And we were told that Sam uses his own office for it. That again shows that we don't have the space for the things that they do have. They have the snow training, I guess. I will say that they have a few things, right? But we're not going to have space for multiple years. So we're going to have students continue to pay money for an organization that has a GA and $1,000, or $1,500, however much it is for. That's $20,000 a year for the next 5 years, which is $100,000 that students are paying before they're able to actually get what is supposed to be out of this ad hoc program, which is renting kayaks, renting all this different equipment. So we're spending $100,000 before students can get that. And I just really want to make that clear, that we don't have the space. I do.
Senator Moy.
Point of clarification.
Yeah, what's your point of clarification?
I would like to yield to Elliot to
Can this be a speaking point?
point of clarification
Oh, okay. He's got some
on the renting of what we can rent.
The clarification has to be about, the proceeds of the meeting, it can't be about subject matter.
But what she's saying is that the only things that can be rented are bikes and hammocks.
Is this a speaking point?
I said et cetera.
I can add you to the list, and then you can yield to Elliot. If that's We'll continue back to Senator Moore.
Mine's a point of information. I'm just wondering, for the speaker, if we do give them the request and that, so that's 9,000 extra, is that coming from, that would be line 30 uncommitted SAF reserve, or where would that be coming from? I'm just wondering.
No, that will not be coming from reserves. It'll be added to the fees. The only time the amendment would have to specify reserves if that's what you want.
Okay, so it would just increase student fees, it wouldn't come out of that?
No.
Okay,
You have to
thank you.
specify.
Thank you for the clarification.
Senator Akintan is next. Oh, sorry, President Cronin.
So I would have to agree that a GA is a necessity for a program. I've seen programs over my years have their GA cut, and it is detrimental to the success of the organization. But what I would like to propose would be to amend the amount to the $19,000 that was asked of Maverick Adventures. I know their original ask was $20,000, but they came back and their appeal was only $19,000, so I don't understand why we would give them more than what they asked today. So if someone wants to second it.
Is that a motion?
That's
Yes,
an
it's a motion.
amendment.
Amendment to the motion.
Senator Moore seconds. Yeah, I do want to, so I think John would say this too, to remind everyone, it's $3,500 for a penny, correct? Yep, so just keep that in perspective when you are talking about budget items. So now we have an amendment to the amendment. So on President Cronin's motion or amendment of $19,000 instead of the SAC budget, or the budget request of $20,504, we'll go back down to Senator Kintan for your last meeting.
Thank you. So I kind of have a question. I don't know if somebody, like, I feel like probably somebody from the gallery could probably answer it. But it was in regards to, like, I remember when my Rachel first started, it was kind of like brought up as part of the deal with the dome. Is that correct? And then, like, I feel like the dome was supposed to, like, make a space. Like, the space for MAVRIK Adventure was supposed to be kind of part of the sports ball.
That's not part of it. The support building for the dome is some storage, an entry area, a few bathrooms. It is not designed for space for MAVRIK Adventures.
But initially, was it supposed to?
It was talked about a little bit, conversation, but it didn't transpire.
Okay, yeah, so I was just kind of like touching back on what Senator Roebuck said, because that was like, initially that was supposed to be like the quickest we could get a space for it, but now we're getting the sports bubble again, and we're still not getting that space for it in that sports bubble. So realistically, in order to get a space for it, it's still gonna take a long time. And then also it's kind of been talked about that, like, let's give it a chance, like, and it's almost like we keep giving it a chance, like that, like it keeps getting funded. Like we got funded last year. If it gets funded again this year, next year again, there's most likely, I don't suspect there's going to be any kind of like decrease in participation, because it is an event on campus. People are still going to vote regardless. But it's just a matter of like there's not substantial like increase in the amount of students attending this event. That's the main point. Is the fact that like the students still attending the events, yeah, there's an increase, but it's not like a substantial increase.
Move to vote on President Cronin's amendment to the motion.
Calling the questions for a second. We'll now vote on what, is there any dissent to calling the question? Are you the dissent? Okay, we'll now vote if we're gonna vote. So if you want to close the discussion and vote now, please raise your placard in favor. Yeah, they're voting on whether to vote on the $19,000, the amendment to the amendment. Okay, all opposed. Question's been called. We'll now vote on the amendment to the amendment of $19,000. So this would substitute Senator Zelmer's motion to have it be $19,000 instead.
$19,504.
Oh, five. Okay, thank you. All right, and we'll now vote on $19,504 for MAVRIK Adventures. All in favor of that, please raise your placard now in support. Please raise them high too. All opposed? Please raise them again, guys. Please, really high. Any abstaining? Amendment. The amendment passes. The amendment now stands at 19,504. Back to the main amendment of $19,504 for MAVRIK Adventures. Is there any more discussion on that? Seeing none, we'll now vote on the final recommendation from the Student Senate for MAVRIK Adventures line item. If you're in favor of $19,504, please raise your placard in support now. Again, this is final approval. All opposed? Any abstaining? Can we vote again? Sorry. If you're in favor of the final recommendation, please raise them high, and please don't do like half. Do like full on.
Hands up and don't.
Straight up.
And don't put your hands down until he says to put them down.
What? This is the final vote. All opposed again, please raise them high. Any abstentions? Okay. The 19,504 does pass 15 to 14. That is the final recommendation. That's why we no, it's majority, single majority. John, would you want us to pause or continue with 15 minutes until?
I would go ahead and go forward.
Okay. Next on the list for is students event team.
Student event team recommendations at the bottom with the rest of the activities on your data sheet.
Well, there's the first one.
Yep, student events team is in the yellow column. That will be the main starting motion of $114,720. Any discussion on the SAC recommendation? Number 2, speaking points per person.
I think the SAC recommendation is fair and should stay as put. The only bad comment or dissent to the recommendation was the Fetty Wap concert, and as was stated, it was out of their control, and I don't think that's fair to blame them for one incident that was not of their control. So to punish their budget because Fetty Wap chose to not show up for a concert 1 year is not fair. So just keep that in mind when you are looking at the SAC recommendation, that their pros outweigh their one Fetty Wap concert.
So go, Senator Garden.
Point of clarification, this is for student events team, not homecoming.
Yeah.
Explain.
Homecoming is a separate budget to student events team. There's MAVRIK Adventures, student events team, and homecoming. They're all separate.
Back to the question.
May I make a comment on point of clarification?
Yeah, go ahead.
The Fetty Wap concert is funded out of homecoming, not student events team. The rest of the concerts throughout the entire year are funded from student events team. So that's why, I mean, we're all one big group, 2 pots of money, and so that's why I should make that clarification that Fetty Wap's not homecoming.
Thank you for that clarification. So then to piggyback on that, there was no negative comments or questions towards the events team. So just adds to my point further.
So we'll go back to it. Is there any dissent to the SAC recommendation of Okay, we'll go to Senator Landis.
All right. Well, Senator Moy was the first one to speak, so of course no one else has said anything yet. I do think that the student events team does a great job with particularly the events that they're asking for increases for. The $1,000 for movies, as well as $2,000 to increase their WOW Zone event. and they've done a really good job describing how those events have achieved some objectives with gathering in non-traditional students and off-campus students to do events. The point I'd like to bring up is that to continue these programs, these successful programs that have satisfied objectives, do not necessarily need to add money to their budget. They could look into their budget and cut programming that hasn't been as successful at achieving their objectives. This is already a $111,000 pot of money. It's a significant pot of money, and I do feel that there's likelihood that programming could be changed rather than necessarily simply added.
Senator Garten.
She's got one.
Sorry, hold on, I just lost my point. Senator Landis, can you say your thing again? Oh, okay, never mind.
Hey, do you want me?
So with student events team, they only put on the events year after year if they are successful. They do try often to program new events. It is a reoccurring thing. MAVRIK event or student events team, the WOW Zone has been very, very successful this year, and that's why they want to continue it next year. Tubing at Mount Cato, that's another one that has been repetitive because the retention is so high on those events. But there are new events that they are producing each year if their events do not have high attendance.
Senator Brokaw.
Okay, 2 points. The first point is yield to redundancy. That's what I was going to say. Senator Garden covered that. The second point is that SAC kind of put it into like the calculator thing is on this. I'm an English ed major. I don't know anything about any of this kind of stuff at the time, so I'm learning on the way. A $3,000 increase doesn't even increase it to a cent, so it doesn't even affect the budget at all, really.
Senator Moy.
I also agree with Senator Robach's point, and also I just want to bring up during the questioning, they talked about how they didn't have enough funding to send as many people to that conference that they wanted to, and how they worked and sent sort of like a, for lack of a better word, skeleton crew that shows their financial responsibility and that they're able to work through a good budget even when they don't have the full amount that they need. So giving them this increase, I trust that they'll utilize it in the best way that they can.
Motion to move to a vote.
Well, that was the end of it, yeah. Call the question. Is there any dissent to calling the question on the SAC recommendation? Seeing no dissent, we'll now vote on the SAC recommendation of $720 SAC recommendation. You can see it on your big sheet. All in favor, please raise your flag. All opposed? Seeing none, the SAC recommendation is passed. We'll now move down to the reporter. Is there any dissent to the SAC recommendation? There is dissent. Do you want to speak to this? Senator Landis will start off.
So as far as the reporter budget goes, I think there's a lot of discussion on a few items. One being the CRM software. A proposal that I might have in relation to that. During questioning, editor-in-chief said that CRM software should eventually, is anticipated to pay for itself. If that's the case, then I would suggest that the initial cost that they may not recoup immediately could be funded through SAF reserves, and that way it doesn't increase their base budget for year after year at that $5,000 level. So I would suggest that that might be a responsible action we could take to amend the motion.
Is that an amendment?
Yes.
You write that on, you write that on a sheet of paper, please.
Sure will.
He's gonna give me a sheet of paper and then I'll bring it up. You just want to speak. You need to give him a minute to write. Explain what you want.
So I can take appropriate notes, can you tell me the amount that you're talking about? Yeah.
So reducing the recommended by $5,000, so it would be down to $66,637. And also recommending that
The
the
additional
software
5 come from
reserves. Correct.
So the amendment to the main SAC recommendation is $66,637 with a recommendation for $5,000 staff reserve. Is that correct? Okay, and that's second by Senator Moore. Is there any further discussion on the Senator Moore?
I seconded this motion because as you can see under this, the staff notes, I don't feel that the reporter has been financially responsible. I spoke to that about student events team. They've used money for gold passes, what I spoke about, the printing copies. There's additional, the gold mine copybooks being distributed to other universities. They have not been financially responsible. So I think that this cut is a fair thing to ask of them.
Any further discussion? Senator Zellner.
Oh, okay, good. So I just kind of want to bounce off of that. When we are looking at how much, like on the budget sheet that we all have links to, and if I'm interpreting it correctly, I'm a poli-sci major, so don't judge my math skills, I'm really sorry. But they, the surplus they had or the carry forward from fiscal year 18 to 19 was $15,000. So I just want everyone to keep in mind how much money they make that they're able to use towards this in the future. And I agree with the motion that it needs to be decreased because they are able to self-sufficiently provide this, and I don't think students need to do it for them.
Senator Roloff is next.
Okay, a couple things to speak on. I do agree with taking it, I guess I had that as a point of recommending for it to come from staff reserves, so that's covered. And I do think it's good that it's a recommendation to cut the amount spent on coupon books because students should not be paying for the benefit of other universities and colleges. It should be going to our students. In the SAC guidelines, parking passes actually cannot be purchased for use of students, faculty, and staff. And they mentioned that students use these passes. They mentioned that them having to work with class schedules to get to meetings. So that means that students are using these passes when they are not allowed to. And SAC also recommends to Senate to make it so that not only can they not purchase them with student fees, they cannot buy them with their budget at all. The reasoning behind this is because they are an organization that is partially funded by student fees, so they should not be able to buy them if they are using student fees in any way in their budget.
Vice President Omar.
Are you to that chair?
Yeah, I just want to give a quick point. They didn't have, I can talk about, they didn't have a surplus, they had a deficit. Yeah, so parentheses is a deficit for the carry forward piece that got brought up there. Just wanted to clarify that.
Any further discussion on the amendment of $66,637 with $5,000 coming from staff reserves? Any further discussion? Yeah, further.
Would the SAC reserve one be a one-time line item? Okay, just clarification.
Any further discussion? Senator Williams?
sorry.
Okay. Seeing none, we'll move into a vote on the amendment.
It's written in there up to $5,000. If they come across a software that only costs $2,000, I would highly encourage them to use that one instead. If that makes sense. Like the way it's written, it says up to $5,000, not necessarily just straight up $5,000.
Okay, yep, I will read his amendment. It says the overall budget line for reporter be amended to $6,637, and the purchase of CRM software of up to $5,000 come from staff reserves. That is his amendment. That makes sense, everyone? Seeing no further discussion, we'll now move into a vote on, we'll now move into a vote on the amendment that I just read off. If you're in favor, please raise your placard now. All opposed? The amendment, any abstaining, sorry. Seeing none, the amendment passes. Now the recommendation is the amendment of $66,637 with a $5,000 coming from, up to $5,000 coming from staff reserve. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, we'll now move into the final recommendation from the Student Senate on that line item. All in favor, please raise your placard now in favor. All opposed? Any abstaining? The amendment, or the $66,637 and the $5,000 staff reserves is the final recommendation for the report. Do you want us to write for?
Yeah, let's keep going until it's actually here,
Okay.
ready to go.
We will now move into campus recreation sports as the next item.
So basically what we're doing now is we are going back to the top and just going to move down in the order of the ones that we haven't done. So the point was to get the appealing and the groups that asked you here to get them out of the way so that those folks can leave now, and then we go through the rest that there weren't any requests from.
All right, so the SAC recommendation is on $500,554 and $554,351 as the SAC recommendation. Is there any dissent to that recommendation? Any dissent? Seeing none, that item has passed. Again, I'm going to clarify again. What I'm saying is that if you don't agree with that line amount, then we won't discuss it, and yeah, we'll just vote on it. We'll now move into intramural recreation sports, which is $25,000 staff recommendation. Is there any dissent to that recommendation? Any dissent? Seeing none. Are you dissenting? Yeah.
No, I'm just trying to make the microphone stay.
Okay. Seeing no dissent, the $25,000 SAC recommendation for the intramural recreation sports club is passed. We will now move into the campus rec venture ed program / planning wall. $147,728 as a SAC recommendation. Any dissent? Yeah. Okay. Lenz is dissent. The floor.
Just as a point of clarification, are we breaking in like a minute? Because, okay, so we should just go. Okay. I'd like to take a couple moments here to speak on the recommended cut of professional development money to adventure education program graduate assistants. And I'd like to discuss a few points as to what that money actually is and how that money is actually reflected in other budgets. The main point with this SAC recommendation is that this does not happen elsewhere. I would contend that it may not be described in this way elsewhere. However, conference travel and attendance, as well as conference registration and travel for students, do come up in several other budgets. We heard from one today, student events team, who talked about conference travel to the NACA conference. We have a couple more representatives in the room. John Bolcock would probably agree that Greek Life does attend conferences. Multicultural Center, we have a representative in the room, would also agree that students are funded at times to go travel to conferences. So that this is not necessarily, this line item does show in other budgets, it's just referred to in a different way. So it's not unprecedented. The second point I'd like to make about this is that this has gone on for several years. This has been something that's been offered to these adventure education program graduate assistants for 5 or 6 years now. Each year we see in our budgets staff salary and fringe benefits increasing. These staff salary and fringe benefits increases are represented by collective bargaining, unions, laws that require those increases. And as a student government, we do not take any look at those increases and say we're not going to do them. We're in fact prevented from saying that we're not going to fund those. Professional development for graduate assistants might be considered similar to a fringe benefit. However, those graduate assistants do not have the same type of collective bargaining protections or laws that prevent us from taking away money in that way. Graduate assistants only have this representative body to represent them, and why we should turn our back on something that they've been able to benefit the university from, which will be my third point, for several years, is beyond me. A third point is directly to how this money is spent and what its actual effects are. For those of you who do not know, I am an adventure education program graduate assistant, so I can speak from personal experience as to what this money is used for and how it benefits the university. For the purposes of clarifying any conflict of interest, I will not be here next year. This is not going to affect my pocket. Over the last 2.5 years, I've had approximately $2,500 allocated to me. I came in as the graduate assistant position halfway through a year. And in that time, I've attended several conferences. Three of the Association for Experiential Education and 2 for the National Challenge Course Practitioner Symposium. Those conferences cost students $2,500 over the last 2.5 years. The Adventure Education Program serves students, groups for free. We also serve community groups, middle schoolers, as well as all the way up to corporate professionals. While we charge nothing to students, we charge a nominal rate to nonprofit organizations and school groups to try to get people out to experience our programs. We charge a premium rate to corporate groups. Just in terms of corporate groups that I have facilitated, that I've been able to facilitate, because the people who go on to those corporate programs are the director of the program, the graduate assistants, and those undergraduate staff who have benefited from several trainings. I think I skipped that part. Every time I go to a conference, I come back and conduct a training for our undergraduate staff directly afterwards. So this is meant to enhance programming and also enhance the professionalization of our staff. As I was saying, my personal hours of the groups that I have personally facilitated out on our challenge course totals $4,560 in returned money. That does not count the number of staff that have facilitated these corporate groups who have been trained by myself and the other graduate assistant, who have benefited from the industry knowledge of maintaining a professional program. I contend to you that these corporate programs would not necessarily come to Minnesota State Mankato if we did not have a professionalized program. I get stopped in the street by members of Greater Mankato Growth, the Hilton Garden Inn, Community Bank. These are all organizations that come to our program, and they speak to me about how impactful the program was for their business and that they look forward to coming back. And so even if we look at purely in return on investment, I'm bringing back about double what the cost is to go to these, just based on the programming that I'm able to conduct. And that's just me. You know, it's compounded with all the other undergraduate staff and other graduate staff that the Adventure Education Program employs. And so I urge us to go back to the original ask for adventure education program of, I'm looking it up, $149,728.
Is that an amendment?
Yes.
Is there a second? By President Cronin and for the so the amendment is to bring it back to the FY20 request of $149,728. Any discussion? President or Vice President Omar?
I'm just gonna give my silence as action.
Okay, Brett Marshall.
Again, just wanted to add a clarifying point to the travel piece about the $1,000, how that wasn't allocated elsewhere. It's not specifically allocated elsewhere, specifically for only graduate student travel. So the other ones, like you said, do fund travel, but it's undergraduates are included with that as well. So there's no other lines that are specifically for a single graduate student for professional development. So just to clarify your point, but very, very well said about your return on investment piece.
Any further discussion on the amendment to the main motion? Seeing President Cronin.
Yes. Yes, so the reason that I seconded it, just because Senator Landis had a lot of really good points about the opportunities to learn and grow. I mean, even ourselves, we went to a conference hosted by Students United, and that was something very controversial last year for those of you who were part of the budget meeting about changing one of our delegation meetings to an advocacy conference. But the board of directors for Students United, we are so pleased with what has happened, and I'm sure a lot of us who attended took a lot away from it. And so in a similar light of what Senator Landis was saying, there can be so much learned at a conference, and for such a small amount of $1,000, which is a third of a penny for the credit fee, I think that it really outweighs the benefit, and I think that it would just do a lot of good work for a lot of people in the campus rec department, as well as, like Senator Landis said, them being able to come and teach us about what they learned there and giving them that professional opportunity.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll now vote on the amendment of $149,728 as the main motion now for the SAC recommendation. All in favor, please raise your placard. All opposed? Yeah, please raise them high. Any abstaining? The amendment passes. The main motion is now back to $149,728. Any?
Motion for
We're on the final process. Okay. We will now vote on the final recommendation for that line item. So all in favor of $149,000, $728, please raise your pocket now. Seeing none, it is. Oh, sorry. Any no's? Or sorry. I see them. All opposed. Any abstentions? The line item is passed. President Cronin. Motion to recess, seconded by Vice President Omar. Do I have consent to do that? Yeah. 30-minute recess. John.
2 pieces of pizza, please. And then if you had one of the special dietary restrictions, please come see us.
We'll reconvene in 30 minutes.
This is Senate only. Sorry, folks.